And we're back on YouTube. Great. Um, so let me just finish getting this set up. Oh, computer just wants to crash. Um, all right, let us grab a. There we go. This is what I wanted to pull up. Just gotta pull up something. Have I debated Voice of Reason? Yes, a long time ago. I stopped debating him because I found him dishonest. The way he interprets the data, I think, is very dishonest. Shift background to the left. Well, that's just because we don't have any guests on, but I will have to shift it back in a moment. All right. And let me just edit the, well, I guess I can do that later. Um, okay, that's done. I think we're good to go. All right, let's bring up a guest. Okay. Let us bring up utensil music. Utensil music, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going? Can you hear me okay?
I can. Do you believe in God?
I do.
Okay. What would you say is like the
And
most compelling reason that you could offer me
well,
so that I would believe?
I would like to ask you, what is it about whatever you've heard that makes it difficult for you to believe in God or makes it seem whimsical or silly?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that there are some conceptions of God that perhaps are not whimsical or silly, but it's just like the arguments that I've heard for them, like the arguments or the evidence, it's never seemed particularly compelling to me. Like the arguments are not forceful. And then I've also heard pretty compelling reasons that are that make such a thing impossible. So it's just a matter of weighing the arguments that I've heard.
I see.
And then there's also some like intuitions that are just like I think probably most people share that kind of made me start thinking about this to begin with.
Okay. So I was programmed early on, right? To go to Sunday school and church and sing the songs, and it made you feel good. And uh, there's kind of I think most people have a conception of God and their religion as derived from that really early experience where they get kind of uh, made to feel good about the whole thing. And I think that as a result, a lot of people have misconceptions and misunderstandings and uh, sort of pie in the sky dreams about the whole nature of the church and everything else that goes along with the religion that has kind of swept over most of the world, right?
I mean like so look, there's kind of like there's like the naive version of a lot of these religions where it's just like you believe what the book says. And like I think like especially if you believe that like the events as described in the book like actually happened, like a flood,
Right.
like like wandering around in the desert for 40 years. But so there's like that kind of like naive interpretation of the book, and like those things like pretty clearly didn't happen. And if you take that view, then like yes, your views are kind of silly. On the other hand, if you take like the view that these are stories told by people that are trying to get at something divine in nature, that's a less silly view. I still have issues with it. I still think that it's not a true view. I think it's still incorrect. But at least
Yeah.
at least then there's a conversation to be had.
Right. Right. So there's a whole notion of having to having to suspend your disbelief on things that are patently uh, provable to be untrue. The whole creation myth, the whole idea of Adam and Eve eating something that they shouldn't have, and that's the reason we are where we are today. Um, I mean, those I think you can chalk a lot of it up to teaching stories and to um, not an insincere sort of teaching story. In other words, some sort of deception that was concocted to make people believe something, but but like you say, a way to try to get at the insight as to what God is doing. And
So,
I think that if you think of God as being all powerful, and you really believe that, I think most people who believe in God don't really believe that, because they say dumb things that God could easily overcome
well, yeah,
if
you'd
he was
think.
all powerful, right?
So, Utensil, why
I
don't you give me what kind of God do you believe in, and then tell me, and what is a
Okay,
compelling reason why I
okay,
should think that that's true?
sure. So I believe there is some unifying force, unifying power in our universe and outside of our universe that we might, in a realm we might not understand, um, that makes things make sense. And I don't think that things makes have made so much sense just randomly happening. I
So,
think
what's the argument that such a thing
the
exists?
idea of randomly happening things is almost as uh, strange as believing in a
Hold on. So,
unifying force.
what's the argument that such a thing exists? Is it just that randomness seems implausible, or
It's the fact that um, it's almost like things go in a direction they're supposed to go because they know in advance they're supposed to go in that direction. Where does that knowledge come from? So
well, would you
how
say
does the
that like an electron
salamander
knows something?
say that again?
Would you say that an electron knows something?
I wouldn't say that an electron knows something, but I say that there's information in the electron that is coherent with information that is abundant elsewhere. And
Uh,
because it's coherent, there is something that lends it that coherency. So what
so
is that
right, but
thing?
how do you go from there is some coherency to there's something that gives it that coherency?
Well, because it's ubiquitous. The coherency is ubiquitous.
Okay.
The
How do
the
we
harmony is ubiquitous. The
how do we
things
go
that are
from there is coherency universally to something gave it that universal coherence?
well, that's the interesting thing, right? So does there's this idea of the creator and a personality that creates, and I think it's far more subtle than that. But that's the closest that you can get to really
But so
describing it
look,
to the mass of people.
so that's one possible explanation for why there's coherence in the universe. But that's not the only possible explanation, right? Another possible explanation is that this is the only way things could be.
Well, that's true, but why is it the way only way that things could be? So that's kind of what I'm getting at. It's not necessarily as overt
Well, no, I mean
as
like perhaps that's just a fact of reality that this is the only way it could be. Perhaps there is no deeper explanation.
but there is something that keeps it in line.
I
There
don't.
is something that
Why do you
keeps
think
it on
so?
track. So what I'm saying is that you can harmonize yourself with
But
that
I don't
by
I don't think that there is something that keeps it in line. I don't think that like if there wasn't some sustaining force, everything would go haywire. I think just things are
oh
the way
I
they
don't
are,
think I
and
don't
they keep being that way.
it's hard to I mean it's hard to describe. When I say keep it in line, it it has sprung from this tiny seed, whatever that is, and it propagates based on the way it should be. And the way it should be, the and in Chinese, the way is Tao, and Tao is also God. So the way it should be is God, and we kind of live in that. And
It
so if you
so look, so maybe I can shortcut this and just like, is there any feature of reality that you think exists that I don't?
No.
Okay, then it just sounds like you're an atheist.
well, I guess what I'm saying is religion can get you closer to that understanding and to being able to harmonize with that
I don't know what you mean harmonize.
with our reality.
I mean, like maybe it can make you feel, maybe like meditating can like make you feel better about something. Like maybe it can like be enlightening, but it doesn't say anything about whether it's not like you're learning more about how the world works. You're not learning about something that you wouldn't have noticed otherwise. It just like we have that. It seems like we just use like physics to do that, and chemistry and biology and psychology and neuroscience and all that to do that, and then you can
Yeah,
meditate to like change your state of mind, I guess. But
I've talked with you before about things that seem to me um, that I had experienced dreams that have foretold the future or given me information that um, was otherwise not possible for me to know. And I don't know how I knew those things. And your retort to that was, well, it just happened because randomly you dreamed of this thing that occurred the next day because it was fairly probable somehow for it to occur. But these things were not anything I had control over that I had experienced. And so to me, there's something extra that is helping me by just giving me a little hint about, yeah, tomorrow is going to be like this, and it's not it's not something that shouldn't happen, even though it seems strange. Or, hey, you know more
so
than you think you know, and here is a hint about something that you couldn't know that you will know in the future.
so Utensil, I'm gonna let you go because we have spoken before. That's true, but that's not why. It's just because we're not really talking about the same class of things.
Okay.
Um, and I am looking for like people to provide reasons for me, not just things that convince them.
Not just in an alternate way to confirm what you already have, right?
Yeah, roughly.
Um,
But thanks for
I
being here,
see
bud.
I see what you're saying, but uh,
Take
I was
care. All right, let's talk to Reflect Cast Media. Thoughts on pantheism? I'm not convinced by it. Reflect, how's it going?
Hi, it's going good. How about you? How about
I'm doing
yourself?
all right. Actually, before we start, I need to thank Grimlock for the $5 on Cash App. Voltaire God thinks. For have you heard Voltaire God thinks 'tis funny? I haven't, but I'll take a look at it. Um, W in the chat for Grimlock is always supporting live. So, Reflect, what you got for me? Do you think that God exists?
Uh, yeah, so I am a theist, but
Okay.
so first I want to just ask a preliminary question just to make sure I understand where your understanding is. Do you know what the Newton's first law of motion is?
I do.
Okay, so do you believe that that law is pretty consistent in terms of that objects don't change in terms of their motion unless something is acting upon it? That can be exported into the philosophical realm as well. The principle of
I think that doing that
causality.
is a mistake. It's a law of physics. It's not a philosophical law. The only reason we treat it seriously is because we can observe that that's how things behave when we measure their motion.
Okay, is there a good reason that we should not think that that works in other realms as well? That things persist in their state
Well,
unless acted
I mean,
upon?
you can think that, but like, there's no justification. Like, there could be like, there might be a law of finance that like, you can never predict the future, right? And then if you tried to import that to like physics, you'd just be wrong.
Okay, so that's fine. I just wanted to make sure I understood. So
Yep.
now your prompt is you're an atheist
Yep.
and you want to know if you can be convinced. Now, I think it's
Well, it's more of a
interesting because
challenge,
okay,
not I want to know if I can be because like in principle I could be convinced, like absolutely. This is more of I suppose can is perhaps not the right word. Will is a better question. Like I'm asking you, please try to do it.
Okay, so in order to be convinced of something, what you're essentially saying is that you need some sort of sufficient evidence to
Yep.
suggest that whatever position is being posited is the truth, is
Yep.
factual.
Right.
But the problem is that evidence itself is a subjective reality.
Yep.
Evidence to me could be different than evidence to you. So you're asking for being convinced so that in other words, your evidence is that which convinces you. So convince me that there's evidence, but convince me that that's convincing. But that
Well, no,
sounds a little bit
no. So,
circular.
so look, what I'm asking for is like we do this all the time, right? Like, if two people disagree on something, and then one person presents evidence, if the other person is honest or is receptive, then they'll be like, "Huh, I hadn't heard of that. I hadn't thought of it that way. You're right. That evidence is compelling." I'm asking people to present that evidence.
But the problem is that we have different value structures, right? What
Okay.
is convincing to you is not necessarily convincing to me because our value structures are different. So we would have to actually talk about your value structure and why you value certain concepts and ideals over others. That's how I think we get to some sort of progress in that conversation. So from my understanding, my perspective, your value system and structure is based on empiricism. Is that
No, I'm not an
a valid?
empiricist.
Okay. So what is your value structure based on? What convinces you of certain claims?
I take a pluralist view. So empirical claims can be useful for, or empirical evidence can be useful for demonstrating empirical claims. Um, Interpersonal evidence can be useful for demonstrating interpersonal claims. Philosophical or mathematical evidence, these would be in the form of arguments, can be useful for demonstrating philosophical or mathematical claims. Um,
But this
I'm a
particular claim is
pluralist.
a God claim, right? So it's
This
a
particular
God
this
claim. So
particular claim can be interpreted depending on the type of claim. So some people will try to present empirical evidence for empirical claims that like Jesus actually rose from the dead. And so that's an empirical claim that we should look for empirical evidence for, or perhaps historical evidence for. Other people will take it more of a metaphysical route because, if you believe in God, then you believe that there is like this other type of substance or this other type of reality. And so then we can talk about the metaphysics of that. There's just a whole bunch of different ways that you could potentially provide evidence for the claim,
right. So if
depending
you
on what your
don't
claim is.
value, yeah. So if you don't value metaphysics and you don't value the metaphysical world, then how can you be convinced of anything in a
I
metaphysical
never
world?
said I don't value the metaphysical world. I talk metaphysics all the time.
Do you believe that there exists entities exist outside of the physical reality that we see and sense?
It depends on what you mean by exist. Generally, I'm a physicalist of some kind, but that is a metaphysical claim to begin with. The physicalist position is a metaphysical position.
Okay, so it's a metaphysical position, but do you believe that metaphysical beings, meaning a being that is not made up of energy, light, that is not made up of matter, of things that are within this four
I
dimensional
generally
realm?
think that the only things that have ontology are things that exist in a physical sense. But that's like a
So
metaphysical
then,
position that I hold.
yeah, it's a metaphysical position, but then that makes you an empiricist. I mean, you believe
No,
that
that's not. That's not what
empirical.
an empiricist is.
Okay, you can
Like
educate
an
me on that.
empiricist is purely someone who thinks that all ideas, or what's the word? It's that all thoughts or all ideas come from external sources.
Well, no, I mean, from what I understand, an empiricist is an
You might be
individual
thinking of
who.
materialist, which I'm not. I'm a physicalist.
Okay, okay. So, well, from what I understand, at least, is that an individual who's an empiricist, basically, they say that things are presumed to. Sorry, not things are presumed. Things are that everything is can be empirically based, essentially. So we could say that yes, I have a metaphysical position on something, but that's coming from your mind. Your mind is physical. That I believe what I can see. I believe what I can conceive of
By
physically,
the way, it's not
right?
clear that the mind is physical. The mind might be an emergent thing from something physical, but that doesn't make the mind physical, right?
But do you believe that the mind is physical, or you believe it's not physical?
It depends on how you're using the word physical. I think that the mind is an emergent thing from a physical system, in the same way that software is an emergent thing from like physical electrons being arranged in certain ways.
So
But like
then
the
why?
software itself doesn't exist like it doesn't have its own like ontological existence, right?
Okay, so the mind is a physical thing that you said is a metaphysical thing or a physical thing that emerges from a physical
I would say that
thing.
the mind is like, you might call it like an abstract thing, um,
Okay.
or perhaps it's like an emergent phenomenon arising from a physical system.
And you believe that because of what? What is the reason you believe in that?
It seems plausible given what I know about the rest of the world, that like this is that complex emergent phenomena are things that do happen in the real world. Like, for example, biological life, like
Mhm.
cellular life. That is a very complex emergent phenomenon arising from like the laws of chemistry, for example.
Well, now you're starting to sound like a theist. This is exactly how we get to God, right? Because God is essentially all of these biological processes, this complexity that we see in the world, all of that is emergent from a transcendent being, a metaphysical being. So I'm not sure why you would not be convinced of a God when that's what we
Because
see in
nobody's
the
given
world.
me good arguments. That's why.
Well, I mean, I think this is a very good argument right here, right?
What's
You're
the argument?
saying, well, you believe in a metaphysical mind that is the
Well, I don't know if I would
justification.
say the mind is metaphysical.
Well, you said that it emerges from a physical thing, but you said it's a metaphysical. At least that's what you believe, is
I
that
said
it's a
abstract.
metaphysical.
I think I said potentially abstract.
Well, I mean, what's abstract? Abstract is metaphysical. It's not physical.
Me- Metaphysical is. Can you give me a definition of how you're using the word metaphysical here?
Okay, yeah. So when I say metaphysical, I mean that which is not empirically empirically tested, so to speak. Like it's something that you
Well, then the
could
mind is,
launch.
of course, empirically tested. We test it. That's what psychologists and psychiatrists do.
Okay, but I'm just saying that it's something that you wouldn't be able to touch or feel or use your senses, your eyes, your ears, your tongue to interact with, to engage with. You wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, so
You
in
wouldn't.
that sense, you could say that it's outside the realm of empiricism, and I would agree with you on that. That's why I'm not an empiricist. I'm a physicalist.
Okay, so but now, so I'm trying to understand again. You said a physicalist is. Go ahead,
So a
your definition
physicalist
again.
is somebody, and it's a circular, almost a circular definition, but it's basically a physicalist is someone who takes the position that all the things that exist, these are things that you can do physics to. You can study using, in some sense, like natural law.
Okay. Okay, so you can apply natural physical laws to this particular thing. That's what makes it physical.
Well, that's what physicalism is, the view that all the things that exist are those things.
That you can apply it. So can you apply natural laws to a mind?
Well, that's part of the belief system. In some sense, sure, that's what like psychologists do.
Yeah, but how you can't apply gravity to a mind, the
Natural
law of
law
gravity.
natural law is more than just laws of physics. Natural laws would be any kind of, some sort of uh, perhaps quantitative description of a thing that can be, repeatedly demonstrated.
So what is a natural law that would apply to this metaphysical mind?
You're the one incorporating the metaphysics here. You could talk about like various laws of behavior in psychology.
But those are those laws are demonstrable. Like, in what sense is it a law? I'm just trying to understand because it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound applicable. Like, there's a realm that theists believe that there is a realm that is outside of the physical world, the
Hmm.
empirics that we see and taste and touch and smell and hear. We believe that God is that metaphysical being, that being that is not bound by anything in the physical world, right? He created the physical world, so it would be an infinite regress if he was a part of the physical world, right? So our understanding of that is these are two distinct parts that interact and engage with one another. But when you it seems like when you are explaining things that are descriptive of that realm, like the mind, like things that are I don't know how else, like concepts or laws of logic, right? Those are the types of things that we would say are not physical things. They're
I
not
don't
things
think
that
that the
you
laws
can.
of logic are things that exist in the universe.
Okay, so then would you say that that is outside of the empirical world?
Sorry, I
That's
don't think that they're things that exist in reality.
okay. They don't exist in reality. They're concepts,
Yeah.
which would be to me something that's akin to God, right? It's a metaphysical thing. It's not.
Okay, but
It's
I
not.
think that concepts just live in brains. So
Okay, so concepts just live in brains, but they are. But do you believe that the laws of logic are usable or are useful, are valid, are or do
sure,
you believe that
they're absolutely useful
both
in
of
the
them?
same way that like like the laws of like the laws of economics and the laws of psychology and the laws of chemistry, the laws of physics, these are all very useful. They still just exist in the mind.
Okay, so they're not physical things. They're not like things you
No,
can
they're not.
touch.
These are descriptions of physical things.
Okay, so this is why. So what I'm trying to get at is, yeah, math was another one. So I just posted in there,
Hmm.
right? So those are tools that we use that are
Yep.
non-physical, but they have
Yeah, they're
an
conceptual.
existence. They do exist. They do
Well,
exist. It's not like they
I
don't
don't think that
exist.
I don't know what you mean by exist then. I mean, I think that like they exist in minds insofar as like, the YouTube window that's currently on my screen exists, but it's like, does it like exist or is it just like kind of like a representation of electrons being in a certain state?
Okay, so this is okay. So we're getting to really the bottom of how you value systems. What your value system
Well, it's not
is
really a
basically
value
any.
system. It's like a metaphysical system.
Okay, so your metaphysical system, anything that is metaphysical is not doesn't exist. It doesn't actually exist, is what you're saying. It's just a I mean, I don't know. I don't know if something doesn't exist, then how can you appeal to it? How can you refer to it? It just doesn't make sense to me.
Are you talking about like so I don't when you say like anything that's metaphysical, metaphysical is like a classification of like ideas. Um, are you saying like anything that would like typically be viewed as like an abstract object?
I guess you could say that, yeah.
Okay,
Abstract
yeah. So
objects
I
or
generally don't think that
laws.
abstract objects exist. I think that concepts are emergent things in complex structures. Um, and so like, the chat window that's up on my computer screen right now, that is an emergent phenomenon. And the resulting light that enters my eye is an emergent phenomenon arising from some complicated arrangement of electrons in a computer.
Okay, so I just pulled up the definition of metaphysical, right? And so what
Hmm.
it says is that metaphysics it is a branch of philosophy studies the fundamental nature of reality existence and the basic structures of beings, but
Hmm.
metaphysical pertaining to the nature of reality beyond the physical and empirical. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that definition? It pertains to the nature of reality beyond the physical and empirical.
Yeah, so the question then is, what is the nature of things beyond the physical and empirical? And my view is that the nature of things is that there are no such things beyond the physical and empirical.
So so then you're okay, so you're a
That is a
physicalist.
metaphysical theory. It's absolutely a valid one. It's just kind of like a small one. It doesn't have a lot of extra baggage on top of it.
Okay, so then so an empiricist,
Not me.
someone who
Not an
believes
empiricist, by the way.
okay, so but you're a physicalist, right? Everything
Hmm.
has a physical justification, physical basis, and so forth.
Almost, but
That
sure.
all comes from so what you're saying is that all concepts, these concepts come from a mind, but the mind itself is not physical.
No,
So how
the mind is an emergent thing from a physical system. Now, the question of what emergent phenomena are, well, that's a perhaps a deep question. I kind of think of them as like convenient groupings. Um, and so, this is just what happens when you have a whole bunch of complicated stuff. You get this thing that behaves in a certain way. And so we kind of just like group that like that like extra way that wouldn't have been obvious from like the underlying physics. We group this extra like these extra features under the term of like emergent phenomena or under this new object that we call like a mind or that we call a computer program or that we call a concept or whatever.
but really, I mean, it just sounds like you're being inconsistent with your reasons
Where's
for
the
not
contradiction?
believing in because your reasons for not believing in a god, which is a metaphysical entity,
Hmm.
is not consistent with your reasons for believing in metaphysical things like the mind or properties of quality or properties of entities or laws. Like it sounds very inconsistent. You're
Where's
saying
the
I don't believe
inconsistency?
because you said I need to be convinced, meaning I need evidence of God, right?
Yeah,
And that
evidence or an
evidence,
argument or something like that.
yeah, but I mean, evidence for you is physical because you said it all really
Or an
stems from a
argument. Arguments
physical.
are fine.
Okay, but the argument would have to be based on your value system. If it's
I
not,
mean,
if
so I try to think
for
like
it to be convincing.
rationally. So like if you made an argument that deductively follows and you can come to a conclusion based off of what we would consider like the laws of logic, then that would be compelling.
So I mean, we could go down that route if you wanted to. I mean, anything that begins the Kalam
Kalam.
cosmological argument, I think, is a very valid argument that talks about the beginning of the universe and
It's valid.
if
It's
something.
not. I don't think it's sound, but it is valid. I agree.
Well, I mean, anything that began to exist has a cause, and so we believe that the universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. And if we
I
go
don't believe
down
that the
that path,
universe began to exist.
okay, so then I think you're going to have a very hard time justifying that belief that you have.
I don't think I will. To be
Well, I
clear,
mean,
my belief is
infinite.
not I think the universe didn't begin to exist. My position is I'm agnostic on whether the universe began to exist or not.
I mean, that's a knowledge issue. We're not talking about knowledge. We're talking about belief, right?
Well,
You
yeah, so
believe
if you
something.
want to assert that the universe began to exist, then the burden of proof is on you to, give me that evidence, give me the argument that that's true.
Well, I mean, it's consistent with what we see physically. And you're a
Yeah,
physicalist,
but
so
an eternal universe is also consistent with what we see physically.
no, it's not. It's not
Sure it is.
evidentiarily consistent at all.
It
We don't
definitely
see.
is.
I mean, we have systems. We have they talk about if you've ever seen these YouTube videos, an infinite energy generator, right? And they spin the wheel and it just
Hmm.
continues to run and run and run. Well, we
Hmm.
know that's not true because systems have entropy, and
Yeah,
therefore it
entropy
has.
reversals can occur in sufficiently, strange, exotic systems, and they're consistent with the data that we have.
So entropy reversal. Can you give some evidence to suggest
Uh,
that that's the case?
yeah, actually, well, if I gave you the evidence, it would show my name. I literally just wrote a paper on this, like I submitted it last week. Um, but there are examples where you have and basically entropy dumping. I can give you some examples of some papers that talk about this.
But
Let me pull it up really quick.
it would have to be reversal of entropy without any input from external sources.
Yeah,
It has
so
to be
the
within,
model that I constructed does that. Yeah.
and it's a physical model that exists
Hmm.
that we can test.
Yeah, so I mean, like the kind like I'm a theoretical physicist by training, like that's my day job. So like we build models that like are either toy models that kind of like describe something conceptually and show how like that you have this concept that can actually be realized in some physical system, or you build a model that like is supposed to like predict reality. So like there's different ways of doing this. But for example, there's a paper by Elizabeth Gould and Nayesh Ashfordi entitled "Does History Repeat Itself? Periodic Time Cosmology." And in this model, they talk about which is consistent with the data. They talk about an expanding universe that expands until it gets to a till it gets to a near till it approaches the near. Sorry, is this actually the paper that I was referring to? No, I think it's this one. It's the turnaround in cyclic cosmology by Loris Baum and Paul H. Frampton. So this one talks about you have a universe that's expanding, it expands, and then when it gets near the point of heat death, very, very close to the point of heat death, or sorry, very, very close to the point of the big rip, instead there is a describable quantum fluctuation that occurs that basically shatters the universe and drops the entropy in all of the subsequent universes to basically be zero. And then it starts over. And so like this is one way that you can build a universe that has existed forever with a built-in entropy reset.
No, remember, you said you're a physicalist, so this is all
Mhm.
mathematics. Mathematics is in a realm of axioms and conventions, which has nothing to do with physics, physical stuff, right? So this is not
Okay, so you're not
evidence.
understanding what physicalism is. This would be an
Well, I
example
mean,
of somebody doing physics.
no, but I'm saying it's not evidence that you should be using
So
to give you the reasoning to believe that the
so
universe is eternal.
the claim is that the second law of thermodynamics means that the universe's entropy is increasing and the universe's entropy must have been decreasing decreasing to some minimum value. I'm giving you an alternative that is consistent with the laws of physics, that can show how we can see entropy being dumped, basically. This is consistent with the laws of physics, right?
Yeah, but that's just a theory. It's not actually
So
evidence that you
is the idea that the universe had a beginning. That's also just a theory.
Yeah, but it's consistent with the evidence the physical evidence.
So is the model that I just presented. That's also consistent with the physical evidence that we have.
No, you said it gets to a point where it's close to the big rip where entropy dumps zero, and then it switches and all of the entropy dumps all over the system. But that's not something that you have tested. You haven't.
This is consistent with the data that we have, right?
But no, it's not.
So we have observational data of the universe. This model reproduces that data.
Okay, so somebody has tested the universe getting to the point of near.
I don't think you understand how cosmology models are tested. Basically, like you build a mathematical model and then you check, does that mathematical model agree with the observations that we have? If yes, then your model is alive and well. If no, then you should tweak your model or you should throw it away.
But that's math. That math is in a
that's
realm.
That's how you do cosmology model building, and that's how you can because to be clear, yeah,
So I'm saying you said you're a theoretical physicist. That's not physical. You're using
that's
math.
physics. That's what physics is. When I say using physics, so a physicalist is somebody who thinks that all the things that exist are describable by natural laws. One of those natural laws would be the kinds of things that are described in this paper, this paper by Baum and Frampton.
But you're not understanding like the inconsistency. You said
I just don't think you understand my position.
No, because you said that it's fine. You're a physicalist, right? You value physical systems, descriptions, and so forth. But earlier you said that they're not real. You said that they don't exist. They don't exist in a real
the math doesn't exist out there in the universe, but like there is clearly math in our heads.
No, I understand that, but remember, this is about convincing you, and you said what convinces you is something that would have to be evidence, and in the realm of evidence, you can accept an argument, but you're not accepting the fact that you have to be convinced physically. You have to show some kind of physical evidence.
No, that's not part of being a physicalist. A physicalist can be compelled by philosophical argumentation just as well. A physicalist doesn't reject philosophy. A physicalist doesn't reject, ethics or morality. A physicalist is just the physicalist position is a position on ontology. That's it. It's not a position on, on logic. It's not a position on ethics. It's not a position on anything else. It's not a position. It's not even a position on epistemology.
Okay, so your understanding is that this is a viable way that the universe could have always existed with this reversal of entropy, that which has not been tested. We haven't tested it yet.
Neither has the universe having a beginning, by the way. That hasn't been tested either.
Okay, but we see other
You can
systems.
infer it using the observation that you have, and you can equally well infer that the universe is always existing using the observations that we have. The observations are consistent with both.
It's just I haven't heard of any observation
I'm aware
that shows reversal of entropy or an entropy or a system where that entropy is just flatline, like it never changes. I haven't seen a system or any evidence to suggest that.
Every quantum system, like every quantum system in every ideal quantum system has unchanging entropy, by the way.
Every quantum system has unchanging entropy.
So every quantum system that's held in like the same state has unchanging entropy.
Okay, can you give me an example of that? Like
every quantum system. That's every single one of them.
So the quarks, the up and down quarks.
If you take an electron and you put it into a superposition of spin up and spin down, 50-50 superposition, and then you keep it that way, the entropy of that quantum system will be, the entropy in that quantum system is 0, and it will stay 0 forever.
Okay, and it doesn't change. So then that breaks the first law of thermodynamics, or the first law of Newton's law of motion. Then is that right?
No, Also, Newton's laws generally are not things that apply at the quantum scale anyway. They're like classical approximations of quantum behaviors.
Okay, so then what? So then what? So we're, I mean, the law of entropy, then thermodynamics, the law of entropy.
That's a statistical law that talks about
It's
closed
breaking.
systems. That talks about closed systems and time symmetric environments. Um, so like, for example, one of the conclusions that you can draw actually, and this is like a, ask any physicist, they'll agree with you on this. If you put an apple in a box, um, and it's completely sealed off from external environment. However you might do that, it's a thought experiment. Completely sealed off from the external environment. It'll eventually change because there's bacteria that might digest it. But if you give it a trillion years, that apple will reform again. This is called Poincare the Poincare recurrence time. This is just a statistical phenomenon.
It's is this a theory?
It's a theorem.
Okay,
It's a mathematical theorem. It's like mathematically true.
that eventually the apple will return to its original state,
Yes.
which is a seed, which is
No,
it
no.
will
I
not.
mean, so you have the apple. It'll rot away. It'll decay it because bacteria will eat it up and decay it. If you wait a trillion years or whatever, at some point during that time, the apple will be fully formed again.
Okay, not empirically demonstrated.
This is
not
this is a mathematical truth, right?
mathematical truth. Okay. Well, this is interesting because mathematics is, I don't see how you can export the mathematical world in every sense, because mathematics has to do again with axioms and conventions like infinities. We don't see infinities in the real world. They don't,
You
you
don't?
can't export that from math into the real world. No, you can't. You can, like, for
Why
instance,
not?
you can divide something into an infinite, potentially into an infinite number of divisions, but the entity is still being split a certain number of times that you can measure. So it's not
Wait,
actually
so
infinite,
why can't we have actual infinities in the real world?
because it doesn't exist. There's no
How do you
infinities
know?
that exist in the real world.
What's the argument for that?
No. Well, we see finite parts. We don't see infinite parts. I don't see how
We would
infinite can
well,
exist in a realm that has certain limitations. Infinity
look,
has no
so
limit.
we have no reason to think that the universe is finite in size. Like there's no data that supports that. In fact, the data supports an infinitely large universe.
Is that your belief? You believe
No, no,
that?
that's
The-
that's that's like what the data supports. That is like the standard cosmological model.
Okay, but is that what you believe? You believe that the universe is
I lean towards
infinitely.
that. That seems plausible. Yeah.
Hmm. So then what about the background radiation, the redshift? What about all
What
of
about
that?
it?
Does that not suggest that the universe was once much closer together and tighter, and universe meaning everything
So
was.
that says stuff about the observable universe. It doesn't say anything about the size of the universe as a whole, right?
Wait, make that make sense? Say that again.
So there's the observable universe, which is like the stuff that is close enough to us that we've had time to see it. And then there's the rest of the stuff of the universe, which, don't really have a good reason to think that it doesn't exist. Because, there's stuff that is slightly further away, or at least there's good reason to think that there's stuff that's slightly further away that we just can't see yet.
So, but don't you believe that that the Big Bang actually took place 13.8 billion years ago? You don't believe that, or?
It depends on what your interpretation is. I don't think that there was a singularity.
Well, not a singularity, just expansion. I'm just talking about,
Yeah, absolutely. Expansion. Yeah,
everything.
the observable universe was much smaller 13.8 billion years ago, and it's much larger now.
But it had a boundary, right? That would be the universe
That's
that
the
was
observable
smaller.
universe was
So the
smaller.
problem is, okay, so the problem is you can't say that an infinite entity was smaller or larger. You can't say that
The
if it's
observable
infinite.
universe is finite in size.
I
No
don't I
one
don't
just
know this distinction. How are you making a
Okay, so there's the
distinction between
observable
the
universe, which
observable
is
universe and
literally
the
the stuff that
actual
we can
universe?
see directly. Then
Yeah.
there's the universe, which is just like the set of all stuff that is spatially connected.
But isn't the Big Bang theory, doesn't that encompass everything that exists, all
Yeah.
entity,
So
all matter, all energy, all everything,
yes. So
not just what we
absolutely,
see.
the idea is definitely that the entire universe had a smaller scale factor 13.8 billion years ago than than it does today. But that doesn't mean it was finite in size 13.8 billion years ago.
But you can't refer to an infinite entity being smaller or larger.
Sure, you
It,
can.
it's
It's with
not.
something called a scale factor.
Well, how? What is it relative to what?
It's
Infinite
it,
is
it's
unbounded.
there's a quantity called the scale factor, which is measurable.
What's that?
It's called the scale factor.
It's not making sense to me because if something is infinite, it's unbounded. If it's infinite,
Yeah,
that means
you're right.
you can't say
So
it's
the
larger or
expansion is
smaller.
a local thing. It's not like a global thing. It's not like the edges are getting further away. It's that every volume of space in a billion years, there will be more volume of space there.
But what else is there besides the space, the energy, the matter? What else is there in the
That's all of
universe
it. That's all of it.
of the big? Yeah. So then, if everything expanded from the Big Bang, everything
Hmm.
that expand, then that's everything. That's not like, oh no,
Yeah,
just
and,
what we
and
see.
and so if you take look if you put if you take 8 ping pong balls and you arrange them in a 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter cube, and you put it in like the most empty part of space that you can find, and then you wait 10 billion years, you'll come back and you'll find that that cube now has sides of 2 meters long rather than 1 meter long. That's
Because
all
of
the
what
expansion is
expanded.
because of the expansion of the universe.
Yeah, but it's measurable. It's
Yeah,
measurable.
I just told you how you
Once
can
it,
measure it.
but once it's infinite, and your claim is that it is an infinite universe, to me, I think it's very hard to justify that. When we do the testing, when we do background radiation testing, when we do
Hmm.
redshift testing, when we see that this universe had change. It had change in size.
Yeah.
If it had
Well,
change
the
in
observable
size, then
universe
it
had
can't.
change in size. That's the
Yeah,
important
then
point.
it, and what we observe is
Nobody would ever make the claim that the universe, if even if the universe is infinite, nobody would ever make the claim to say that it was like less infinite or more infinite or whatever. The
now.
observable
Would you?
universe definitely had a definitely had a change in size. Now, when we talk
Okay,
about the
so
universal expansion, what we're talking about is it's a local thing. It's a thing that happens like to a given volume of space in the universe.
imagine everyone in the audience was
Hmm.
watching, and you were to say, "Look, only what you can observe is evidence," and you say, "Well, the observable universe is what expanded," but that doesn't say anything about the other stuff that we didn't observe. Well, we're talking about what we observe, right? That's the whole point. Observe what
Yeah,
is
so
evidence. That
we can
evidence should
infer
be real.
things. We can infer things about the remainder of the universe by the observations that we can make in the observable universe, right? Of course, it's not direct evidence. Light takes time to travel, and so even if things did exist that were 200 billion light years away, there wouldn't be enough time for us to see it. So, of course, there are things that we can't observe that we cannot observe now, but we can still infer properties about what lies beyond the observable universe using observations that we have, like the
But
cosmic microwave background radiation and its particular shape, essentially, like the fact that we don't observe kind of like repeated galaxies in different parts of the sky. Um, the point is that we can make certain inferences about the roughly the shape of the universe using the data that we have of the observable universe.
but that's begging the question. You
It's
literally
not begging
just
the
said,
question.
yeah, it is. You said that we can't, what we observe doesn't say anything about what we don't observe, but you're already
Wait, when did
assuming
I
that
say that
something
what we
we
observe
observe.
doesn't say anything about what we don't observe? Absolutely,
Well,
when
you're
we observe something, we can infer things about what we don't observe.
yeah, but no, I'm saying that you should be if you're consistent, you should be inferring about what you observe based on what you observe, not based on what you don't observe. We don't observe a
Hold on,
universe
that's not how
beyond the
science works
universe.
ever.
Really, it
Like that's
doesn't.
never no
Science is not.
like hold on so in 1930 whatever, Paul Dirac writes down the Dirac equation based off of observed behavior of electrons, and he writes down this equation, and then he what he finds is that, well, if you take this equation seriously and it matches the data that we have, well, then we should expect to see this thing, and this thing being antimatter. And so he just says, well, if these observations are true, we can infer that there should exist this other thing that we now call antimatter, and then lo and behold, antimatter actually exists.
Yeah, but that's based on an observation of something physical. It's not
Yes,
based on
and that's what we do. We take observations of the universe, the CMB, the supernova data, etc., and then we can use our the laws of physics that we know to work, and then we can infer things about things that we can't see, or things that we don't see.
So then you're suggesting that there's something akin to a like a Higgs boson, for instance, right? It's mathematically posited that it should be observable, or it should be there, should be present. So then they do tests to try and find that. You're suggesting that there is something akin to that with the non-observable universe.
Yes, absolutely. Of course, yes. And like every cosmologist believes this.
That's begging the question, but what is that thing? What is that?
It's not really begging the question. We have other data. We have data that we then use, and we have data and equations that we then use to infer the existence of something else.
What data suggests that there is a universe beyond what we can see?
Yeah, so you can look at the CMB data, and what you'll find is if you look at, these are called the multiple moments, it's the multiple moment decomposition of the power spectrum. So like you have like hot spots and cold spots, and you can look at like how those hot spots and cold spots are distributed. And one of the conclusions that you come to is that our universe has zero spatial curvature on average. At least that's, within statistical error, it's zero. It's like, 0 plus or minus like 0.05 or something like this. Anyway, so you come to the conclusion that the universe has zero spatial curvature. And then you ask, okay, well, a universe that has zero spatial curvature, what could its topology be? And you can just go look back into the 1920s, I want to say. Mathematicians have classified all the possible topologies of things that have zero spatial curvature. So we know that if our universe has a shape, it must be one of those 18 things. And you go look at them and you say, well, some of them involve things that would violate the laws of physics, like parity flips. So we can rule those out. Some of them are infinite in extent. And we also have to assume isotropy, which is an observation that we make. The universe looks the same in all directions. So some of them are non-isotropic, meaning that they're infinite if you go in one direction, but they're finite if you go in another direction. So we can rule those out. And then what you're essentially left with is either an infinitely large universe that doesn't repeat back on itself, or you're left with a finite universe that just loops back on itself after you go a certain distance. But if you go out and look in the sky, what you find is that we don't see the same galaxies in two different directions. So the evidence is against the kind of looping back on itself thing, because if that were the case, you would expect to see the same galaxy in more than one place. We don't see that. So the only thing that we're left with is a universe that's infinitely large.
Okay, I mean that's your explanation. It sounds
It comes from the data.
It's very hard. It's very hard to follow that explanation, given that, when we look out into the universe, we see what is present. We see what is there. It really does sound like, it's all theory, but I get that you're saying it's based on data, it's based on evidence. It's hard for me to believe that is the case, when that's just not what we see. It's just not. And I think really theists are much more, we base our
really
beliefs.
Not what we see.
Well, I'm just saying that theists, we base our beliefs in what we see, right? And what's empirical.
Do you see God?
Well, we see the effects of God.
Okay, well, I see the effects of an infinitely large universe.
Yeah, but you see the difference between the two of us is we have way more evidence to suggest that, even if what you're suggesting were the case, way more evidence to suggest that a God exists, because it is
What's
a
the evidence,
necessary
then?
being. It's a necessary being. Philosophically, it founds and bases.
So you're saying God is a necessary being. We can go down the contingency argument if you want, but this initially started as talking about the cosmological argument. So if you want to pivot, we can.
Yeah, Kalam cosmological argument to me suggests that a beginning to the universe, that there is a beginning to the universe, and without a beginning to the universe, or with a beginning to the universe, it means you have to have something based with based on causality, there's something that began it. That's my argument. You're arguing
I mean,
that
that
that's
doesn't
not the
even
case.
follow, by the way. Like both premises of the Coulomb cosmological argument are false, in my view, or at least not demonstrated, I should say.
Anything that begins to exist has a cause. That hasn't been demonstrated.
Yeah, I don't think that that's true. No.
So the only thing that you've been presenting that doesn't have a beginning is this theoretical universe that's unobservable. How is that a
By the way,
strong
the universe is very observable. This is not a theoretical universe. This is a model of the observations that we see. It's not like some theoretical, unobservable universe. We were talking about, yeah, there's the observable universe, then there's the whole universe, right?
Yeah, so that's what you said, right? So
right. But whether or not the universe is infinitely large doesn't really affect whether or not the universe had a beginning. The reason I brought up the infinitely large universe is because you were saying, well, you can't have infinite things in reality, and I've said, well, apparently you can. The size of the universe seems to be one of them.
But the thing is, okay, let's exclude the universe because there's a lot of theory that is not testable.
Sure, exclude the universe when we're talking about the universe. Sure.
I mean, let's exclude it as an example because we're trying to prove that is the case, right? That it has a beginning and doesn't have a beginning. If I'm inferring based on what I see naturally around me, that anything that begins to exist has a cause, I am justified in accepting that claim, and I should be convinced that is a claim that is.
Can you give me an example of something that began to exist?
Sure, you yourself. You began
to
exist.
I mean, did I? Like, in some sense, like the stuff that makes me up existed before I was born, right?
But do you have an infinite set of memories that goes back beyond the point that you can remember?
If you bonked me on the head and I lost all my memories, that doesn't mean I didn't exist before that.
No, but to you, subjectively, it does. That's your beginning.
That just means I was mistaken, right? If you bonk me on the head and I forget my past memories, that doesn't mean that I didn't actually exist. I either existed or I didn't, right?
But that's because we have different value systems. If you don't believe in an objective truth if you don't have a God. So for you, it's all subjective.
Hold on. That's a crazy assertion. Do you want to justify that?
Okay, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I would be hard pressed to find an atheist that believes in objective truths.
I can introduce you to one. Their name is Ian. They go by allegedly Ian on this app.
Do you believe in objective truths as an atheist?
I think that there are propositions that are universally true. If that's what you mean by objective truth, then sure.
Okay, and you believe then? So do you believe that the capital T truth, there are claims, and there are entities that exist in reality outside of your subjective framework, so to speak?
Yeah, there are things that exist, like a star exists whether I'm here or not.
So then are you not a solipsist? Or do you not know the problem of hard solipsism?
No, I'm not a solipsist. I have hands. My hands exist.
But you can't know that, right? You can't know.
No, I do know this. I do know that my hands exist. Therefore, I'm not a brain in a vat.
How do you base that?
Oh, yeah, I can see them. Yeah, I know my hands exist. So look, let me give you the syllogism. So if I were a brain in a vat, I wouldn't know my hands exist. I do know my hands exist. Therefore, I'm not a brain in a vat.
That's not a good syllogism.
It's totally valid. Totally valid.
Well, it's not sound at all.
Okay, which parts do you disagree with?
Yeah, I'm gonna repeat it. If I'm a brain in a vat, I don't know my hands exist. I do know my hands exist. Therefore, I'm not a brain in a vat.
Yeah.
You have to ground that knowledge. You haven't grounded that knowledge.
Well, I have a justification. They seem to exist. I have a belief, the belief that they do exist, and they definitely seem true to me. So, justified true belief. There you go.
Have you ever been in a dream where you thought that you were flying in a plane and you weren't actually? I mean, just because you can believe something and
so you should look up the Morian shift. Look, so I am far more likely to be justified in believing that my hands exist than justified in believing that I'm a brain in a vat. So if I have any kind of knowledge, having knowledge, if any knowledge exists, which I think you and I probably agree that it does, then surely I have knowledge that my hands exist. And if you reject that, it sounds like you're a solipsist.
No, only if you have a God, like a being to ground that. If you don't have a being to ground that truth, then you should not believe.
So reflect. Let me ask you this: how does God know what knows? How does God know what He knows?
How? That's a different.
Yeah.
That's a
What's the
different
grounding?
question.
What's the grounding for God's knowledge?
Yeah, but we presuppose God. God
So there is.
himself
Wait.
is-
So wait. Is God a brain in a vat?
No, God is the entity.
So
that
so
created
God doesn't
all
have a
things.
foundation for His knowledge.
No, that's different. I'm a
Oh, that's
subject
different.
of the
It's
objective
that's
truth.
different. It's just
I'm a
different when
subject.
it's God. God doesn't have a foundation for His knowledge, right?
No, with subjects need to ground their
That just
truths
sounds like
in
special
objective
pleading.
world. Well, I mean, you could call it that, but the reality is
I am calling it that. That's just special. You're just saying, well, God doesn't need to ground His knowledge. Only people
Yeah,
do.
but that's okay.
Okay.
Because it's
So
it's been
so in your worldview, your source of knowledge isn't grounded either.
no, it's not the same. It's just like why is one
Does
one?
God know
How is one
things?
one? Can you ground one being one? No, you can't. There are certain
Does
things
God
that you
know
can
things?
presuppose. Yes, but there are certain things that
Okay.
you
And how do you
presuppose.
define knowledge?
Well, I don't define knowledge.
What
I
is the
just
definition that you use for knowledge? Do you use like justified true belief, or what do you use?
no, I don't use justified true belief. I think it's
Okay, what do you
circular.
use?
Well, I don't have a strong definition for that, but justified true belief I know is it definitely can't be the case because it's circular. It's justified, true. True has to be qualified. How do you know it's true? True
Yeah,
based on
sure.
what?
Okay, you could even say it a justified belief that is agreed upon. But I
And
mean, like,
then
look, if you can't even define knowledge, then how can you even say that God has all of it?
Well, the way that we understand, let's just say the way that we as theists understand God is that God has certain qualities and characteristics. Those qualities and characteristics give God essentially God is the progenitor of all things, and it's based on his qualities and characteristics. So his qualities and characteristics mean that he has the power, the ability, the knowledge, the intelligibility,
But what's
the
knowledge?
to
What does it
create
mean that he
things.
has knowledge?
Well, knowledge meaning understanding of all things, meaning
Okay,
that he
so how does he
has.
justify that understanding?
What do you mean? How does he justify? That's a category area. That question is
Well, so
not
you
a
asked me
good
to
question.
justify my understandings. It
Yeah,
seems totally legitimate to ask how God justifies his understandings.
but that would be like me asking you to justify how one is one. It's no different.
Yeah, and I would
Those
just
are
give you I would just like I could point at it if you're talking about like some sort of foundational or just talking about like some sort of propositional thing. But that's just like you're actually hold on.
no.
Let me ask you
There
what
are
you mean.
certain
What do you mean when you
things.
say justify one is one? Are you talking
Yeah,
about like
there
the
are certain.
proposition a thing is itself, or are you talking about like because typically definitions don't require justifications. They're just like
Exactly.
they're just what you mean by a word. So
Exactly.
but
Every
we're not
every
talking about a definition here. We're talking about like some entity having some sort of mental state that corresponds with understanding.
Yeah, but that's definitionally true. God's qualities and
Definitionally true.
characteristics.
Yeah. But the question is what's the justification for it being
You
true?
don't.
What's the justification for
You,
that knowledge? How does he come to it? How does he know
you
it's not
can't.
wrong?
Yeah, but you can't ask for justification for something that is presupposed. Just
Oh,
like you
okay.
can't
Well, then
ask.
I'm going to presuppose that my hands exist.
Yeah, but you can't do that. That's
I
a
just did.
problem. You can, but it would be a problem because
What's
once
the
you
problem?
presuppose, okay, you're presupposing that your hands exist, right?
Hmm.
At what time? At what time?
Right now.
Right now? What
Yep.
about 2 seconds ago? What
Yeah,
about
they
two
also
seconds ago?
existed then. Yep. Presupposing that they existed the whole time. The
So,
whole time I have memories. Yep.
so you're presupposing every single moment of every single time frame from now until infinity, which is pretty
No,
hard to
no,
do. How do you?
just for my life. So, like the 85 years I'll have or the 75 years or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't even presuppose yesterday happened. You can't
Yeah, sure I
presuppose
can. I
that.
just did. I'm doing it right
So
now.
so then,
Presupposing it.
so then you're presupposing literally every entity, every time frame, every moment. You're saying that that's a better solution than presupposing
I mean,
one
hey, we're both
being.
presupposing something. I'm just presupposing that my sense data's work and my memory is reliable.
Yeah, but Occam's razor, your memory is not
Occam's
reliable.
razor is that you and I both agree the physical world exists, and then you're also adding an extra god on top of it.
No, you're presupposing everything. You're actually presupposing every time
Occam's
you
razor
think.
isn't about your presuppositions. Occam's razor is about the things that exist in your theory.
No, that's fine, but you can use that. You can export that into the
You
philosophical realm.
shouldn't.
Like,
You shouldn't.
you shouldn't be multiplying entities unnecessarily. Why are you multiplying the things that you presuppose? You presuppose that
Presuppositions
this.
aren't entities.
No, but I'm saying you're presupposing that you're on TikTok. You're presupposing that you have a microphone in front of you.
No. I'm
Presupposing
inferring that given some more prior presuppositions.
No, you just said you presuppose that your hands exist. That is a
Yeah.
presupposition.
That's so. I was being cheeky, but my presuppositions are that my sense data is fairly reliable and that the universe is fairly consistent. Those are like my two primary presuppositions.
Yeah, but you can't presuppose it. You'd have to
I just
presuppose
did.
every time.
I just did. Why can't I presuppose? Why can't I presuppose those?
You can't presuppose those alone. Once you
Why not?
start to
Why not?
once you start to presuppose the real world elements and entities in the real world, you have to also presuppose time. Time, that means every
That's
single
part of the
time,
universe, sure.
past and future. Yeah, that's a lot of
I'm
presupposing.
presupposing that the universe is approximately consistent.
So then you can't get yourself out of a dream. You can't. You're stuck in a dream. You don't know that whether you're in the dream world or not in the dream because you've presupposed it.
No. My presupposition is that like my sense data is reliable, right?
Yeah,
So
but
I
every
can
single-
get myself out of a dream because when I'm in a dream I can check that my sense data is, not reliable, that the universe is not consistent,
No, you can't check. And every single prior moment to this point is your memory, and memory is definitely known to be not
Yeah,
reliable.
but part of my
Therefore, you can't
presupposition is that the
presuppose.
universe is fairly consistent, which means that the way that the universe behaves now is roughly the same way as it was before and roughly will be the way it is in the future. See, I can just presuppose that.
You can only presuppose something that is consistent. You can't presuppose things that are
It is
inconsistent.
consistent. Where's the contradiction in my worldview?
Memories are not reliable. A memory can change.
Oh,
You
where's
can
the
forget things.
contradiction in my worldview?
Well, you just said that your memories are reliable, that your
Fairly
experience.
reliable, yeah.
Yeah,
They
but
are.
that's that. The moment you say
true.
fairly, that means that there are times where your memory fails you. If your memory can
Absolutely.
fail
Nobody
you,
said otherwise.
yeah, but you can. So then, therefore, you cannot presuppose things that are immutable. You can
Why
only
not? Sure
presuppose
can.
things
I
that
just
are.
did.
Yeah, you did, but that just means your worldview is inconsistent. That's all.
Where's the contradiction?
Anything that is
What's the P and
mutable,
not P?
anything that is mutable, meaning that it can change, cannot be presupposed because it is changing.
Wait,
Presuppositions
hold on. I'm sorry.
are static
That's an assertion. Why should I believe that that's true?
because it's a standard. Standard has
According
to
to
be.
who? What's the law of logic that this violates?
Okay, I'll give you a way to understand it. Right, 1 + 1.
Give me the syllogism.
is
That'd be
based
good.
on- Okay, I don't have a syllogism for you, but I'll just give you
Okay.
an example. 1 + 1 is based on an axiom, right? It's based on
It's
the
based on a
axiom.
bunch of axioms, but yeah.
Okay. Axioms and conventions of math. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if those axioms and conventions were changing,
Mm-hmm.
how could 1 + 1 = 1 into the future? It wouldn't.
Then you just
So the
wouldn't be
system-
presupposing those axioms anymore. You just
No, but that's
presuppose a
the
different
point.
set of axioms that describes how those axioms change, or something like that. The point is you could just presuppose you could just like assume those axioms, and then you would say that 1 + 1 = 2, where
Yeah,
1
but then it
and
becomes
2 and plus and equals are defined according to your axioms.
right, exactly. So it becomes an unreliable system with the
How is it
presuppositions
unreliable?
and axioms.
I'm just
No,
assuming that the universe is consistent and that my sense data is fairly reliable.
No, a lot of physicists and physicalists don't understand this. You cannot presuppose something that is mutable. The only way that this works,
Where's
where
the
presupposition
contradiction?
works,
Sorry, what's
is
the
that
actual
it's
P and not P?
immutable. I don't, like I said, I don't have a syllogism for you. All I have
Okay,
is
so then it's just an assertion. So do you
No, it's not an assertion.
justify knowledge internally or externally?
No, but don't pivot. I think this is important, right? Because we talked about
You've just
this
been
is
asserting
about-
it and you can't actually defend it, so that's why I was letting you off the hook.
No, it's not. Just because I don't have a syllogism for you does not mean it's indefensible. It is
Okay, so then what's the
strong.
defense?
Like I said, any system, every single system
Mm-hmm.
that we base our systems on axioms, conventions, presuppositions, and that allows for us to generate meaning. Meaning is not derived from nothing. Meaning is derived from axioms, conventions, and presuppositions. Every single worldview has presuppositions and has those
Sure.
assumptions.
Sure.
So if your assumption, you're assuming something that is ever changing,
What
it
am I
will
assuming that's ever
create.
changing? I'm assuming that the universe is consistent.
You
And I'm
said your
assuming that my sense
memory.
data is fairly reliable.
Yeah.
Now, one
So
of the things I can derive from that presupposition is that my memory will be fairly reliable.
two things.
But that's not, I'm not presupposing that. I'm presupposing that the universe is consistent.
Yeah, but you said that you're presupposing that the universe is consistent, and you're presupposing your sense data. Your sense data is not something that you can presuppose because it's
I'm
mutable.
presupposing that it's fairly reliable, meaning that there is some statistical way I can evaluate the truth or the validity of the sense data that I have.
But you actually can't. You actually can't
I didn't consider that the refutation of my worldview is nuh-uh.
No, I mean, my point is that once you are admitting that your worldview is based on something that is changing, then your worldview is
Wait, sorry,
unreliable.
which presupposition is changing?
Your sense data. Your
No,
sense
no, no.
data
The,
is
the sense, the
reliable.
fact that my sense data is fairly reliable, that's not changing.
But you don't know that to be the case.
That's a
Not only do you not know
presupposition,
that
my
to be-
guy.
I'm sorry. You not only do you not know that to be the case, you know that's not the case. You
That my sense
know.
data is fairly reliable? No, I actually do know that it is the case.
Okay, if you have glasses, right? I
Mhm.
can see that you have glasses. Why
Yep.
do you have glasses? Because your
Because my
sense
eyes,
data is
because my
not
eyes aren't
reliable.
perfect. It's fairly
Exactly.
reliable though. It's fairly reliable. That's the point.
Yeah, but what is reliability? What tells
That
you
it,
that there's a
that
hand in
that
front of you?
that more likely than not, more often than not, it reproduces the world. It reproduces the world around me in a, well, I don't know if we want to say high fidelity way, but in a way.
Yeah, but the world around you is
Hmm.
something you've presupposed. So it's
Yeah,
circular.
yeah, you're right. You're right. It is okay. It is I am
So it's
presupposing that the
circular.
universe exists and that it's consistent. That's absolutely part of the universe being consistent, that it exists. Yeah, you're right. This is a presupposition. Now, and you're
Which makes it
presupposing that God
makes it a
exists.
problem.
So it seems like our worldviews are epistemologically equivalent.
Oh no, not at all. You're presupposing the universe is consistent, that that
Hmm.
your sense data is consistent to a world
No, that
that
the
is
universe is consistent and that my sense data is fairly reliable.
okay. Your sense data is reliable and the universe is consistent, and you're judging your senses on the presupposed external world that you haven't justified. So
It's a presupposition, my
stuck in a
guy.
loop.
It's not
Okay,
a
so
loop. It's a presupposition.
you just
There's
haven't.
no loop
Okay,
here. I'm not just a loop would imply that I'm trying to justify something on something else, but I'm not. It's a presupposition.
so then, like I said, then your presuppositions are
Hmm.
essentially infinite in reality.
No,
There are
there's two
infinite
that my
presuppositions.
sense data is fairly accurate and that the universe is consistent. Those are the two.
Both of those imply time. So you
Okay,
don't
yeah,
see how.
there are implications and inferences you can derive from presuppositions, just like how from your presupposition you claim to be able to derive logic or something like this. The
No,
point
but
is,
I'm just
and
saying.
you like from your presupposition assumes or like implies math, and it implies a universe that and implies time. Like, yeah, presuppositions imply things. That's what axioms do.
No.
Like,
Once you presuppose God, it gets you out of this quagmire. You don't have to presuppose all of these random things in
I'm
every
only
single
presupposing
moment.
the two things, my guy. I don't know
And
what the struggle is here.
because those two things imply time, that means every
Yeah, and
single moment.
your presupposition also implies time, right?
No,
Otherwise, how do
God.
you know that time exists?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
Okay, how do you know that time exists?
So because it's based on what we value as truth. We value revelation as truth. So if God has revealed that he created things in time, 6 days and so on and so forth, then we don't need to presuppose it because it's revealed
Right, right.
truth.
It's implied by your presupposition, right? It's implied. So if you presuppose that God exists, then from there you can derive, you can imply that time exists because you can then go look at the Bible and then you can say that, well, if we presuppose God exists, then God made time in such and such number of days and so on. It's an implication. It's derivable from your presupposition. It seems like
That's
that
only
in
if
both of our views you can derive true propositions from the axioms.
No, so we have a different set of hierarchy of what we
So
value. I value. I'll just give it to you, right? I'll give it to you.
sure.
So we value first the number one thing that we value is revelation. Revelation is truth because God is truth. So everything that stems from God is true. So
Hmm.
whatever God says, that's truth. Then beyond that, we have logic and rationality. And then beyond that, we have empirical data, sense data, and testimony, and so forth. So those are the ways that we arrive at truth. But we start with revelation. If
Okay.
revelation, it is
Yeah, I
revealed to
understand that.
us, yeah,
So
if
look,
it has been revealed to us that human beings were created, then I know I'm not a brain in a vat. If it's been revealed to me that time exists, then I don't have to worry about presupposing the past and the future. Yeah, I
can
can
you hear
hear you
me?
now. Yep.
Okay. Um,
Yeah, I
can
can
you hear
hear you
me?
now. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So an internalist has some sort of internal justification for their knowledge. An externalist relies on something external to justify their knowledge. So are you an
So it's in
internalist or an
between.
externalist?
It's in between.
Well, these are
Yeah, in
mutually
between
exclusive.
because there. No, but you can rely on external things to give you truth, and rely on internal things if
I'm talking
external
about
is
like at the
not
foundation.
is not there. Well, I haven't really thought about that, but if I were to, I mean, first we start with the external, which is God. We start
Okay,
with
so
God
so you're an
is the
externalist.
external.
Got it. So I'm an externalist too.
I mean, I can't
I
say
think
that.
that
I can't say
I
that
think that I
fully.
get justification from my sense data. So we agree. Our epistemologically are equally well founded.
I don't know that I'm an externalist from the absolute sense that you're putting out, but from the way I understand it, or at least the way as a theist would believe, is that there is an external reality, which is revelation. God reveals that truth to us,
Hmm.
and then there are also other internal things, internal mechanisms that we can use to arrive at truth as well. But the revelation is never superseded by those internal subjective realities, right? Because they're inferences. Those inferences could be wrong. So that's why we refer to the external source to get
Yep.
us out of that
Okay,
subjectivity.
so we're both externalists. Great. I am an externalist. I use the external world in my sense data. You use revelation. So it seems like we're on equal footing now.
Yeah, but one is justified and the other isn't. That's the
How are
problem.
you justifying the how are you justifying the knowledge that you get from God?
Because remember, we mentioned that if you're using your sense data
Sorry,
that's
no, no.
based on,
You're attacking my worldview. I'm asking you for your
I'm sorry.
justification
Okay. My justification for
for
revelation, for
how you're
believing in
justifying
revelation.
your knowledge that you're getting from God. Yeah.
Yeah, so God is the necessary being that grounds truth. Truth.
That's an assertion. But look, I'm asking, how do you justify the knowledge that you get from God? How can you justify that that knowledge is true?
Well, like I said, you don't justify
Okay,
God and
so
his
it's
qualities.
right. So then it's
It's a presupposition.
justification free. You don't have a justification.
No, I'm saying
Your
that
worldview doesn't have a foundation.
I'm saying that it is justified for me to believe that. It's justified for me to believe that that is the case. But it's not justified for you to believe that
Sure it is.
the
Why
external
not?
world is consistent, because it's not. That's the problem, is it's not
The
that
external
you're
world is
just
very consistent. Yeah, yeah, it is.
the external world is not how okay, so
That's what laws of nature are.
okay, so that's
They
what you mean by
describe the
that.
consistency.
Okay, so you mean consistent as in it obeys certain rules and laws and so forth.
Yeah, that it behaves consistently.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that. I didn't understand what you were trying to say then from that perspective. But you were also basing that on your experience, right? Your
So
experience
there's, I
is
mean, there's two prongs. But again,
Mhm.
um, I'm asking you for your justification.
Yeah. So, like I said, our justification is a presuppositional. It's an axiom, right? It's a posit that we presuppositionally assume is true, that God is true. So we don't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
we don't
But I'm talking about
justify
the
our
knowledge that
knowledge.
you have, right? So where does the knowledge that you have come from?
God.
Okay, so like God tells you something, and so so God tells you something, and you say,
Yeah.
okay, well now I believe that this is true. But in order for
Like instincts.
in order for that to be justified, in order for it to be reasonable to say that yeah, God told me this thing and therefore I think it's true, you should have some sort of justification for how God knows it's true.
Why do you need a justification for something that's positive or that's presupposed? You wouldn't need that
Well,
because
I mean, but then you just have no foundation for knowledge, right?
no, but you're thinking of it as if God has no qualities and characteristics. His entity, his being himself, is what is presupposed, and that includes qualities and characteristics like having knowledge, like having the ability to change things, like having might and power, right? So from a theistic perspective,
But
it
okay, so
doesn't
you're just,
need.
I mean, you're just defining it that way. It still means that you don't have a justification for it.
But it's a definition, so we already agreed that definitions don't have justifications.
Right, but the definition that you're giving is a definition of a being that can't provide a reason for why you should believe it, why you should believe that it's true.
No, that's a different claim. They can't
No, no,
provide a
no, no. Like
reason.
God tells you something, and the way that you're defining God is something that just has certain mental states about propositions, right? That's what knowledge is a type.
No.
Knowledge is a type of that thing, right? Um, so I mean, if you know, one of the ways that you can talk about knowledge is you can talk about beliefs, I should say. One of the ways that you can talk about beliefs is you can talk about them as like an attitude towards a proposition, right?
Okay.
Like you have a certain attitude towards the sky being blue. That attitude is either, you know, positive or negative, and we say that the positive attitude corresponds with true, and the negative attitude corresponds with false. Um,
I agree.
so God is a being that has attitudes towards propositions. That's what it means
Hmm?
to have.
No,
No. Oh, so then God doesn't have knowledge.
no, God doesn't have beliefs.
Well,
God has not.
knowledge is a type of belief.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree
So
with that.
knowledge is just a belief that is perhaps justified or is perhaps true or something like
That
this,
that's
right?
that's only because of your worldview. But
Okay,
because of my
how are
worldview,
you defining knowledge?
yeah, knowledge is God. God is knowledge. God has an all.
Is God
Has the
identical to knowledge?
Well, God is the progenitor of knowledge of
Okay,
all things
so then
from
what is
all.
knowledge? My question is like
Anything,
what do you mean when you say knowledge then?
anything that can be known, anything that can
Oh,
be known,
you're
and
using the
to
word in the definition.
so what I'm saying is that knowledge is anything that can be known. Now, I'm not using
That's
knowledge in the definition.
the word
I'm not
known
using
and knowledge are different
it's
different
it's a-
senses or different words corresponding
yeah,
to the same
but
thing. So like saying knowledge is anything that can be known is just using the word knowledge in the definition. Because if I asked you what it means for something to be known, you would say that it's to be in the state of having knowledge about something, right?
if you look up the if you go into a dictionary, you'll see that
Okay.
that's consistent. That there are many
Knowledge.
words that
So,
yeah.
knowledge, A1, this is from Merriam-Webster, the fact or condition of knowing something with familiarity gained through experience or association. Okay, let's go look
There
up
we
what
go.
knowing means.
Yeah. So
Knowing,
my point
having
is
or reflecting knowledge, information, or intelligence. Okay, well, it seems like that this is circular then. So you don't actually have a definition
it's
that
not.
doesn't rely on the definition of knowledge.
No, it's not circular at all. It's just it is this in every single
Hmm.
word. If you deduce it down to its base form, it's recursive. Every single word.
Sure,
And
but
so
then so look, if you're not referring to knowledge as like some kind of belief, I have no idea what you mean by knowledge.
okay, so because I accept and adopt the worldview that truth stems from God, knowledge is anything that you have understanding of or that you have acquired in your mind of that which is true. That which is true. So whatever
Okay, yeah,
is
yeah,
true
great,
and
great, great. So how does so when we talk about that which is true, true claims have truth makers, right? A truth maker is the justification. It is the ground, or yeah, I shouldn't say grounding because it's not a grounding. A truth maker is the justification for the truth of a proposition. So what is the truth maker? What is the justification for a proposition being true in God's mind?
can you make that make sense that assumption you just made? Or
Yeah,
that
so
claim
so when we say a proposition is true, it's because it has a truth maker.
and the truth maker is what gives it justification?
The
Is that what
truth
you
maker
said?
is the feature of reality that makes the proposition true.
Okay.
In some sense, you can think
Yeah.
of it as a just. So, like for example, if I
Yeah,
say
I
if
guess
I
you
have
could
a
say.
so if I say the proposition the sky is blue, right?
Mhm.
I can say that that is true on the grounds that, well, there is a sky and that sky has certain features, right? And one of those features is, you can measure it. You could say like, it emits such and such a wavelength or whatever. The truth maker of the proposition the sky is blue is the sky. That is the thing that exists in reality that makes the proposition true.
So the difference between me and you is that when you are saying the truth maker, I'm thinking of God who made it that blue color, right?
So then you're just
saying,
misunderstanding what the word means here.
so you're just saying the claimant?
So the word truth maker is just used to refer to the thing that is like
Claims.
the thing, the justification for a given proposition.
Why wouldn't you use the word claimant, the one who's making the claim?
It doesn't have anything to do with who's making the claim. It has to do with the thing that makes the claim true.
Okay.
So the sky existing and having certain properties is the thing that makes the proposition the sky is blue true.
This is very hard to defend in your worldview. How do you defend? What makes things true in your worldview then?
There are things that exist, and the propositions describe those things that exist. So those things having certain ways of being either make propositions true or false. Easy.
No, but what makes it true? What makes it actually there?
That there is the truth maker out there in the world that has certain properties, that is a certain way.
That's like sounds like God. It's like God's the truth maker.
No, like this. So when if I say the star is yellow, if there's a proposition the star is yellow, then the truth maker is the star being yellow.
That's not the truth maker. That's your observation.
That's what a truth maker is. Yeah.
No, but you're talking about a quality that is observed.
Yes.
From
those qualities of objects can be truth makers. Yeah.
No. Okay. So you think the entity itself can make it true? It being its own self from your subjective perspective.
Those are the things that make propositions true. Yeah. Truth makers about objects are the objects themselves. Sorry, propositions about object. The truth maker for a proposition about an object is the object itself. Yeah.
So don't you see the contradiction that you made earlier? You said that you believed that there were objective truths, but that object...
Hold on, I explicitly didn't say that because I don't use that language. I said, if by objective truth you mean propositions that are universally true, then I agree.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, and I agree that there are propositions that are universally true.
Yeah, so think about this, right?
And those those propositions that are universally true would have truth makers. Like, for example, it is universally true that the sun exists. That is a proposition that's universally true, and the truth maker is the sun.
No, but wait a second. Okay, so think about what you're saying. You said an example of this would be the star is blue. The star is yellow, right? And I believe you are, and I think we're both being very genuine here. The star is yellow, right? That's yellow to your subjective lens, but the star could be red to somebody else's eye, right? And so if you're saying...
Sorry, when I say yellow, I mean it emits a certain wavelength.
Okay,
I was just being loose with the language.
That's fine, but it emits a certain wavelength and then it goes through somebody's retina. And that lens beyond or outside of the retina is what shapes the lens to be different. So it's still subjective. So it can be different for different people.
A thing emitting a certain language isn't subjective, no.
No, I'm saying what you detect versus what someone else detects.
But I'm not, that's, I think you're failing to understand the point being made here. So propositions are things that exist in the mind. They have a truth value or a false value, and that truth value or false value is given by the existence or lack of existence of a truth maker. In this case, if we say that, if the proposition is that the star emits wavelength of XYZ nanometers or whatever, the truth maker would be the star doing that thing.
The problem is that each individual evaluating this data, this information, each individual has a subjective reality that
they would either be correct, they would either be right or wrong about it, right? Like they would either measure it and their measurement would be correct or it would be false. It would be accurate or it would be inaccurate.
Well, I mean, that depends. There are people who think that the earth is flat, right?
Yes, and those people are wrong. There are people who think that 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't make it true.
but what makes it true? It can't
Is
be
a truth
the
maker.
entity itself. Yeah, but the truth maker has to be an entity that is beyond and outside of that system. You can't refer to
The
internal
proposition
truth.
isn't the system.
I'm just saying you can't refer to internal truths from a subjective lens and
There's
then
nothing
just
subjective
call it
about the state of
objective.
affairs of the universe. Nothing subjective about that.
Okay, no, listen, just please listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying you can't refer to an internal system from a subjective lens and then just call it objective by saying it's universally true.
Nobody said
that is
that.
contradictory.
You're.
Yeah,
I don't know if this
you
is
did. You said
intentionally misrepresenting my view or if it's unintentional.
no, you
But
said
there's nothing
earlier that,
subjective about the star existing and the star emitting certain light of a certain kind. There's nothing subjective about that.
but remember earlier your statement was, I said that you believe in objective truth. You said no. I said that objective truths, that are universally true. I believe that there are universal truths. If
But
that's
they're
what you mean by
the universally true propositions. Yeah.
yeah. So universally true propositions don't exist in your worldview.
I just told you that they do. They absolutely do. There are propositions that are
You-
true. There are propositions that are false. And some of those propositions are going to be true regardless of who's thinking about them. I mean, there can be people who are wrong about them and who make mistakes in their reasoning, and then they might come to the wrong conclusion. But that doesn't mean that the proposition itself is false.
I believe that there are propositions that are true and false, but you can't believe that because you haven't justified.
I didn't know you
haven't
could
given-
mind read. I've described to you my view on what propositions are. I've described to you my view on what makes propositions true or false. I've described to you my view on what makes things universally true or what makes things not universally true. I've described to you all of these things. Either you're not getting it intentionally or it's an accident.
Okay, so what if I give you, based on your worldview, something that is based on the rule set that you provided, that
Mhm.
you said it must be true. It must be true because of these axioms or principles that you've provided. But in
Mhm.
reality, it is also shown to be the opposite of that or different than what the final claim is.
Are you
Would
saying
then
that there
you-
are true contradictions?
Well, yeah. If no, I'm not saying there are true contradictions. I'm just saying if I can show that your worldview is inconsistent, then you should leave that worldview, right? You should.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
So things are true based on their own signature. Is that a valid statement based on what you said?
No. The proposition is not the thing. A proposition
the
about a
thing itself-
star is not the star.
So the truth maker itself is the entity itself, its signature.
It's the entity and perhaps its properties or perhaps some arrangement of things or yeah.
So
That's
that's
what a
makes
truth maker is. Yeah.
So it is made true by its own self.
What's made true?
Who's it? You said, so you're saying that the truth maker is that entity itself and what it
Yeah.
what it
Yeah, that's what the
is
truth
itself.
maker is. Yeah.
Okay. So if you are now, I'm going to give you an example of something that would break that logically.
Okay.
In a dream, you are experiencing certain things that you believe are true. Correct?
Sure.
Okay. So those entities that you are experiencing, they are truth makers, correct?
No, they don't exist.
No. That's begging. No, you're jumping. We're
If-
talking about your
you
experience.
said if I'm in a dream, then well the things in the dream don't exist.
Yeah, but you don't know that you're in the dream. That's the thing. You don't know that you're in.
You
a
just
dream
told me
when
I
you're in
was.
the dream. I'm telling you from the external perspective. I'm saying when you are in a dream. you
Right.
don't
So
know
if
that
I'm
you're-
in a dream, I'm either in a dream or I'm not, right? So if I'm not in a dream, then the things I'm experiencing do exist. And if I am in a dream, then the things I'm experiencing don't exist. Now, I can be mistaken about whether I think that the things I'm experiencing exist or not. Absolutely can be mistaken about that. So like in a dream, I might be mistaken about it. But that doesn't change the fact that I either am mistaken or I'm not.
No, but that's the whole point. That entity that you're experiencing at that moment is a truth maker, correct? Because that's
No,
what you're,
I might mistakenly think that it is, but that doesn't mean it actually is.
and that's exactly my point, because you can't tell the difference. You can't tell whether or not it is an actual experience or a dream, or whether or not it's
I
a
don't think
truth
that you
maker
can
or
either,
not.
right?
Oh yeah, we can, because God tells us that we dream. God tells us that we have the real world, and God tells us that we.
How do you know that you're not in a
dream?
dream right now?
Because God tells us there are differences between the two.
Wait, no. How do you know that you're not in a dream right now?
I know I'm not in a dream because God tells me about the
How do you know that
reality
wasn't
of
a dream?
no, that's why I'm saying, that's why I'm explaining. God describes dreams. He
Yeah,
describes
yeah,
how a
yeah. So
dream.
so what if God's description of dreams was just a dream?
Oh, that's a different issue. I'm just
No, no,
saying
but
that
how
the
how do you know? How
justification,
do you know that any of this is actually real and it wasn't all just a dream?
it's presupposed. You don't have to justify
Yeah,
that.
I'm
That's
doing
the
the
whole
same thing,
point.
that my sense data is fairly accurate.
Yeah, but I just gave you an example of where your sense
Yeah,
data
and
is
so
not,
so
and that
if
is
so if I could exist in the dream, and I could test my sense data, then I would find that it's not fairly accurate, and that would contradict my assumptions, and therefore I would know I'm in a dream.
okay. Okay, this is just your assumption, but my point is that I gave you an example of something that you've experienced as a truth maker in reality, but
Hmm.
in reality, if
Oh, but
you
it's
were
not in
outside
reality,
of
it's in
that,
a dream, right?
you know, but your experience is real. Your all of your experiences are real. Don't you believe that?
I don't know what you
They're
mean
real
by an
experience.
experience being real. My brain can be
Okay,
in a certain
is
way.
is there anything besides your experience that you can claim is factual besides
Yeah,
what you are experiencing?
I presuppose the existence of a universe that behaves in consistent ways. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so like you could touch a, you know how they do this experiment? They put three
Hmm.
bowls in front of an individual. One is filled with hot water, one is
Hmm.
filled with ice, the other one is filled with lukewarm water. You put your hand into the hot water, you put your hand into the cold water, and then you leave it there for a minute. You take it out and you put it both hands into the lukewarm water. One hand
Hmm.
feels hot, which should feel lukewarm. The other one
Yep. What
feels
you're
cold,
exact
which should feel.
what you're describing is a one of the known and testable uh, failures, if you will, or unreliabilities of human sense data.
Right. So
Yeah, yeah. So,
that
so
should
yeah,
that
that's why I
should
said it's
be
fairly
true.
reliable. It's not 100% reliable. It's fairly reliable
And that is why you should leave your worldview. Because if your
because it's
worldview,
fairly reliable. That doesn't check out. That's not a contradiction.
but fairly assumes a standard, fairly assumes that it is close to reality, but
It
the
just
reality
so all
won't
fairly
have.
means is that if you test the thing that you are led to conclude based off of your sense data in multiple different ways, multiple different times, then you will come to the correct conclusion eventually.
Okay,
That's
imagine this.
what fairly means.
Not imagine. I'm sorry. You know, in London they have this weight. They have this weight. It's based on. It's what they are. They are basing all of the kilogram. Right.
That's in
It's a certain
France.
number of atoms.
That's
Or
in
okay, in
Paris.
France. It's a certain number of atoms, right? And that is what
Yep.
defines. That's the
It's
standard
not
that
anymore, by
defines.
the way.
Okay, but that was the standard that defined what a kilogram was.
Hmm.
So imagine that kilogram is based on this ever shifting standard. I mean, what do people do? They say, "Well, we're going to weigh it against
You
the
just do it over
weight
and over
that that
again.
was."
That's why it's fairly reliable.
No, I'm just saying that people around the world, they judge their weights based on that, and they see how far off they are, right?
Hmm.
How close and how far away they are. But
Yeah.
when you're saying that your standard for truth is this fairly reliable
By the way,
external,
you know that kilogram shifted in mass over time, right?
because of atomic decay, right?
Not decay. No, just because of measurement error.
Okay,
Well,
measurement error.
arguably measurement error. And the point is that's why so we understood it to be fairly reliable. So we just had people measuring it all the time, and there were actually three copies of the thing. So you could verify that, like, if one that you could verify when one measurement was an error by comparing it to the others, for example. That's the whole business of fairly reliable. That's the whole business.
Yeah, but I mean, so here's, and I think this is a good, like, probably a good way to end the conversation. What you're basically arguing for is inference, is inferring these, using inference as a measuring stick, right? And that inference is based on a reality that could be true and it could be false, right? And I'm arguing for a measuring stick that is based on objective reality or objective truths, which is God, right? And
Well,
inference,
unjustified knowledge of those things, that is.
regardless, then you're using justified in your own terminology. But my point is that inference itself, it means that it may be correct and it may not be correct. Your inferences can be wrong. You can see a
And
hundred
you could be
fawns
wrong
and a
about what you
whole
read in the
wolf.
Bible. That's true too.
No, but that's different. Being wrong about what you read in the Bible is not being wrong about God. And
Well,
I
no,
think
I
that's
mean, like it could be that this whole time, like you just haven't been able to read properly, and rather, it says God created the world, or it says that God created Satan because he hates brown people or something. You
Mhm.
just
I
like
don't disagree with you.
you're relying on like your eyes to give you correct knowledge about how the way that God is.
Well, I don't disagree with you that you could be wrong about what religion you choose, but you can't be wrong about
Could you be wrong
God
about Jesus
having.
rising from the dead?
I don't believe that Jesus rose from the dead. So
Okay. What religion are you? I didn't actually ask that at the beginning.
yeah, I'm Muslim. I'm a Muslim.
Okay. So could you be wrong about God revealing himself to Muhammad through what is it, Gabriel?
Yeah, Angel Gabriel. No, no, definitely not.
Oh,
No,
okay.
and
So
that
you
and
couldn't
that's
be wrong
and
about that,
maybe.
even though you only found out about that through your sense data.
Well, this is why I said, we don't have to presuppose the sense data. We accept
Sure you do.
and adopt a
Otherwise you
view.
don't know how that. Otherwise you don't know why that's true.
But you've got to jump into my worldview for a minute, right? Once you
Yeah,
jump into my
your
worldview,
worldview
you have
starts
a
from
sense
your
data.
sense data. That's how
No, it
look,
doesn't.
you have no information about God's behavior until you
Okay,
read some book or you hear some story.
okay. When babies are born, do they know how to suck on the mother's nipple, or do they need to be explained how to suck on the mother's nipple?
They probably know.
They know it's innate, right? There are certain
Yeah,
things which
sure.
are innate
And
in
so do
our
you innately
belief.
know that God revealed himself to Muhammad through the angel Gabriel?
No, we innately have a God concept. Every human being does. So that's why I'm saying there's a distinction between
Is that Fitra?
having an. Yes, yes, exactly. There's a distinction between
I mean,
having a
so
God
by the way,
concept.
that's like also just psychologically false, apparently. Like this has been studied, it's just not the case.
I mean, depending on who you cite, of course, depending on the study.
Yeah,
But my
if we
point
cite
is that,
modern psychologists, right?
I mean, that's maybe your citations. But my point was that we have an innate God concept, and I mean, you used to believe in God, right?
No, I never did.
You never believed in God. Okay, you never
Not as
had
far as I
a.
can remember. No.
Okay, did your parents weren't Christian or they were
Nope.
atheists?
Nope. My parents are not Christian, nor are they atheist.
Okay, are they
They're
Jewish?
something else.
Are they okay? There's some other religion. Does that religion adopt
Hmm.
a God view?
Yep.
And they never taught that to you?
They tried to. Oh, I don't know if they
From
tried to like teach it to me, but I was definitely like in religious environments for a long time.
Okay, and during the entire time that you were in that religious environment, you never ever once thought there is a God.
I have no memory of ever believing that.
Okay, so therefore, since your memory is not reliable, I would still continue to conclude the same, which is that your even though you can't remember it, is that you had a God concept from birth. Everyone has a God concept,
So we're
but
reading
it's
minds now. That's
well,
cool.
I mean, I'm just saying that your memory is not reliable. You said you just don't remember. So if you don't
All right, well,
remember, I mean,
I said as far back as I remember, right?
okay. So and this is our belief. Our belief is that
Do you think
every
that
human
like
being,
babies believe in God?
yes, yes, in a very primordial way,
In what way?
in a way that doesn't include absolutely every revealed quality and characteristic about God, like knowing His wrath and or knowing His
Yeah, so is there any
beneficence.
evidence for this?
Well, I mean, I don't know because babies can't talk and babies don't
Okay, so there's
remember
no
things that
evidence for
were
this
true.
claim. There's no justification.
Well, I think there is. I think there is a very strong justification from a linguistic perspective. We could say,
Okay, what's the strong
and
justification?
so human beings have a cutoff period. This is called it's the period between the age of 2 and 5, right? It's the critical period for a human being. Once a human being reaches that critical period and they have not been taught language, then they can no longer use grammar, right? This is a feral child, a baby that was cast away into the forest and lost contact with human beings and so forth. Then they did not have language and they did not have access to
Okay,
grammar.
what does this have to do with the belief in God?
Well, once they cross that critical period, they no longer can use grammar. But we have grammar today. So if we have grammar, that means there must have been a linguist prior to the age 0 to 2. And this is in from an atheistic paradigm, which is evolution, human beings were born, and then they learned different notes and sounds, which created language and so forth. But how come it is the case that a feral child cannot use
What's that
grammar
sound in the
and
background? There's like some horrible
That's not-
high-pitched squeaking.
Yeah, that's not me. I don't know. But a feral child cannot use grammar and cannot learn grammar into the future. So the problem is that from an atheistic perspective, you'd have to explain how it is that a human being has language.
What is it? Hold on. This is a complete pivot. What does this have to do with it? What does this have to do with evidence for babies believing in God?
Well, because babies are taught. My argument is that human beings were taught before the critical period as a baby, as a
So,
and
but,
actually
but, but what's the actual evidence that this is true for the God belief?
Well, because if you have language today and there's a
You're not. Why are you
cutoff
talking about
period-
language? We're talking about the God belief, not language.
because my argument
Are you
is,
inferring? Are you
No,
in?
my
Are you
argument
are you transferring that idea from language onto God?
yeah, I'm saying
It sounds like an
because we-
inference.
No, we believe that God taught that God
I know you believe that.
revealed-
I'm asking for the justification.
Yeah, God revealed in the Quran that He taught mankind all language. So language
Right.
was
I
taught.
understand that's what it says. I'm asking again. Actually, that had to do with language again. I'm asking, how do we know that the babies actually believe in gods? Like there's
Okay, so
like you're not
I'm
offering any
approaching it-
evidence for this. You're talking about language, and language is not like an understanding of grammar is not a belief in God.
So I'm approaching this from a different angle, right? The way I'm approaching it, and I'll just explain it to you. The way I'm approaching it is that babies have a belief in God, right? And there's a signature that babies are taught language. They're taught language from a linguist. If we reduce all the way back to the first baby, then this is under your worldview, that baby would have had.
There
to
is no
be
first
taught.
baby under my worldview.
So do you believe in Adam and Eve?
No,
Then what other alternative is there?
not that there was a first baby. There wasn't a first human.
So then what was there?
A slow gradient change from non-human primates to human primates.
So isn't there a period where it went from non-human to human?
Not in one generation.
I mean, but there was a point. At some point, it was non-human, and then it became human.
No. That's not how speciation works.
Are we okay? So are we like continually becoming? Are we like transitioning out of a state of human being right now?
I
As human
don't
beings
know
like
if there's
this?
any evidence of that.
I mean, it's just strange that your claim is that there was a slow transition. Then we should be continually transitioning.
Well, we are
And
changing, but it's not clear if there's like a branching happening, right?
I don't know any like part human beings, like half human, half animal. Or I don't know that to be the case, but maybe you have some data.
Are
or
you
evidence that-
like informed on evolution?
Well, I mean, obviously, as a theist, I believe in the Quran.
That'll be a no then.
Yeah, which is that Adam is the first human being. So
Yeah, okay. So you could have
obviously,
just
that'll
told me
be a
that you don't
longer
understand
conversation.
evolution.
Well, I mean, that's a
This
longer
conversation would have gone
conversation.
way different.
I mean, that's okay. I think we have obviously a different set of truths. So yeah. Of
Well,
course
look,
we're gonna
look, it's one thing to not believe it. It's another thing to not even understand the thing you don't believe.
Okay, from my perspective, evolution is just a description of mutations over time. That's it.
Yep, and
Just
w-
through
and what-
reproduction.
Yeah, and the way that we describe species is not as some hard cutoff. There is no hard cutoff for speciation. Speciation is a gray transition.
I mean, but wouldn't you then need to, and this is, just my ignorance then, but you should be able to showcase that there are like these subhuman beings that are,
Well, they don't exist
They-
anymore
why not?
because they all died.
But why? Why did they die and we didn't?
Because we're better. We're better at surviving.
But the generation before them, they were better than them, right? So
Yes.
shouldn't they?
Yeah. So it was a slow transition. Getting better
So
over
you
time.
Okay, so let's just take from apes to human beings, right? You believe that there are these transitional periods where you have different types of human being, or sorry,
Yep. Yeah.
ape-like human beings that are gradually getting closer and closer to human being. That
Yeah.
transition. Okay,
And we have
so
fossils for all these things.
what would be the good reason for why a half ape, half human, or whatever you want to call it, this transitional human, would not survive? If it's better than its
Its
previous generation.
competitors would have survived better. A thing either passes on its genes because it was able to survive efficiently, or it doesn't. And the things that these transitional organisms that are somewhere between, like a pair of species, those transitional organisms, they either stay the same, in which case they just become the next species, or they don't stay the same in the sense that like their offspring are slightly different from them, and their offspring are more well equipped than they were.
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is that it's not demonstrable in the human world. We don't see human beings like with extra abilities that the others, like the
Yeah, you do.
appendix has.
Yeah, you do.
Okay.
By the way, there are humans that can hold their breath for like 20 minutes because they have enlarged spleens, or at least that seems to be why. These are like humans that live in like Southeast Asia, like in the islands of Southeast Asia, because the way that they survive is by free diving, and so it's not clear if this is like an adaptive. Well, it's pretty clear that it's an adaptive trait, but like they like just as a community, they have larger spleens than the rest of the human population because it seems like it helps them hold their breath longer.
But so from your perspective, the verdict is still out as to, whether or not it's an adaptation or evolution. But
Well,
I want to ask you this
adaptation is
question.
what happens when you have different environments, and that can lead. I mean, that's one form of evolution, right?
Well, okay, so I'm going to ask you this question. You don't have to answer the question if you don't want to, if you don't feel comfortable with it. But
Sure.
so Black people are known to have uh, stronger muscle fibers, better connective tissue, in terms of their abilities to fast, quick twitch muscles, right? Does that mean they're more evolved than white people? I said you don't have
So
to answer.
no. I mean, look, like obviously people who whose ancestry goes back a long time in a particular region will have that region, that environment will have an influence on the way that they they present their like biological features. So like I said, there's these people in like Southeast Asia, I think it's Southeast Asia, who have larger spleens. Now, they're still human. They're not more or less evolved. They're just adapted to that particular place. Evolution is not a more or less thing. It's just evolution is a process that describes a particular type of change in allele frequency.
So then there's no example of it. There's
No
no
example of
example
what? I mean, like
of this.
evolution is a
This
chain. Okay, I would
I mean,
suggest
I
that you
gave the example.
like. So look, more or less evolved is not like it's not something like you don't like humans are not more evolved than chimpanzees, right? We
You said
evolved
that
to be different.
yeah, but you yourself said that they outcompeted their competitors. That's what you
Yeah,
said.
so what's probably true is that absolutely people like okay, there's blonde-haired people in Europe, right? So the
Hmm.
people with blonde hair were probably less likely to get vitamin D deficiency than people with dark hair, which is why people with blonde hair tend to exist in Northern Europe, right?
So then they're less evolved. I mean,
No, it's this isn't that less
it
evolved or
has
more evolved is not
implications.
it's no there's not a qualification of being more or less evolved. The point is that you'll have people that are suited to survive in their environment.
The only reason I'm saying this is because these things have implications, right? The implications
Evolution
of
has
this
implications. I mean,
definitely
I
does.
yeah, it does. It's, that we're all part of the human species. That's one of the implications. That no one human
Well,
is
yeah, I mean,
better
that's
than another
politically.
human. That's another part of the.
I
That's
mean,
another
look.
one of the implications because we're all the same species.
I mean, look. That's politically correct. I'm just saying that the
No, I mean
reality
that's
of
like biologically true that we are all the same species.
I'm, but you said it's a gradation. That's what you said. You said it's not like this,
We are
set
all now the
perfect.
same species now, but there was a period of time around 300,000 years ago when there wasn't a when there weren't like definitely humans and there weren't definitely like Homo habilis. There was like some
But
sort of great there was some sort of gradation between the two. Now that we are all basically like, fairly fixed genetically, now that there's no other competing like homo species, like, yeah, now we can say that this is definitively a species of human.
So here's what's really hard, right? If you're positing this evolution, then you're positing change, and you're positing
Yes,
change
change over time happens. Yeah.
through reproduction. Actually, I don't say over time; I say through reproduction, because
Well, it is over
reproduction
time though.
well, I mean, you can have a species that reproduces all like a million. There, like bacteria, for instance. Bacteria reproduces very, very, very rapidly, or a cat reproduces. Has a litter of kittens, right? So it's not
It
necessarily
still
based on
takes,
time.
but time still moves forward in either case.
Okay, that's fine. It's a little pedantic. I don't have a problem with that. But my main point is that you're making the claim that evolution has this gradation and it's about outcompeting the other species. They outcompeted them. And those have implications. So if you're making that as a claim, which I don't believe that is the case, because I believe that every human being stems from Adam. Adam, God created, and all beings are based on that same form. But what you're then saying is, if we look at the world around us, these gradations actually play out in terms of genetics. Genetically, there are
No,
different.
see, no. So now you're misunderstanding. So the gradation that occurred during human evolution, that occurred in these gradations. It wasn't like, how do I want to say this? So modern humans only existed in essentially Africa and like maybe some Southern Europe and like maybe some of the Middle East. They only existed there, and so this whole gradation process, like this whole evolutionary process, took place there. And then humans spread out and then adapted to their respective environments.
Okay, I mean, I don't have a problem. Or like, I could argue that further, but I think we're probably way far away from our original point, and then that's okay. Honestly, look, this is a good conversation. You're one of the better hosts who's
Well, I appreciate
atheistic,
that.
because many atheists will just, oh, no, 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 and they cut you off and they run away. So I appreciate you not running away and sticking with it and having the conversation and going down the path. I would just suggest to you one thing before we end, that you really look into what you're basing your truth on, because if you're basing your truth on something which is not stable, which is mutable, then you have a problem in your worldview that leads to contradictions.
Good thing
and
I'm not
problems.
doing that.
Okay.
And so likewise, I would recommend that you find some sort of justification for how God knows what he knows, because otherwise your knowledge is unfounded. All right, but I'm going to let you go. Thank you for being here, Reflect.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Take care.
We have a lot of super chats to go over, so let's read them and then we will bring up another guest. So with Fear's interaction, the first super chat, who knew? Wait, did I? Yeah, no. Who knew I'd visit a physicist live stream for my periodic break from reality? I did. Thank you, Fears. With Red Fanatic with the $5, genuine curiosity, what do you believe comes before the Big Bang? I'm generally pretty agnostic about it. I kind of like lean towards there being something before, some sort of physical state before, but I'm pretty agnostic. From Mr. Gowd with the $5, cucumbers are a member of the melon family. My life is a lie. What? Wait, that kind of checks out. They kind of are shaped that way though, huh? From Aaron Leitz with the $10, when all else fails, run to the mere assertion of precept. Yeah, precepts are wild. Again, from Aaron Leitz with the $10, thank you. Big W for Aaron Leitz. You can't presuppose, but I can, because I say so. I also solved all those other problems in physics and philosophy, because I say so. Yeah. Stinky Ethian with the $2 says, someone is counting guest contradictions. It hit 36. I think it did in the 40s. L with the $50. Thank you so much, Eve. That means a lot. Eve says, I thought Justin had the most patience, but you're clearly the omni-patient one. It is true. I'm known amongst these kinds of circles as being very patient. That is true. Again from Aaron Leitz. Wow, so much from Aaron Leitz. Thank you so much. $10 again. The universe is the necessary precondition for intelligibility because of the impossibility of the contrary. Yeah, that was asserted. Definitely asserted. They never show that it's impossible though. Aaron Leitz again with the pre-supper. I solved the problem because I say so. Yeah. I'm getting my internet fixed on Wednesday, so hopefully it'll be fixed by then. From American Welder with the $5, I don't think I'm atheist, but I've never been given a reason proof to believe in a god nor a god, or not a god. Then you might be an atheist. If you don't believe in a thing, then that's enough to be an atheist about it. All right, let us. Sorry. Let's bring up the redneck sage. Oh, and did I get? Hold on, I should check for cash apps.
Hello.
I didn't get any cash apps. Hello, hello, the redneck sage. How's it going?
Pretty good. I really enjoyed both of your arguments quite actually profoundly. I really appreciate both your arguments. And can we first both admit that when we're talking about the essential existence of whether or not there is a creator, we're both at 50-50?
I don't see how you would get to 50-50.
Meaning probability, meaning there's 50% probability actually that there is, or 50% probability that there is not.
I don't think that's true.
Okay, so you think that there's more probability that there is not?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, then, oh, great, I'm glad I asked that question first. I'd like to, before I try to get into details maybe of trying to expound on that argument, may I pose a couple questions to you about an argument like the
You can, but you have to answer just a few simple questions, just for foundational
Sure.
stuff, just so I know what you're doing. So you do believe in a god?
I do believe in a God, yes.
Okay, and is that god associated with any like major world religion or something?
Yes, it is.
Which one?
But may I not relay to you which one that is, just to not say color.
Well, no.
Because I
So
don't really-
the only reason it's useful is because I don't want to make any assumptions that are incorrect about you. So it's better if I actually like know where you're coming from, because then I won't like let's say that you're a Mormon and I assumed you were a Christian, then I wouldn't want to assume that like you are like a Catholic or something, that you hold to the Catholic doctrines even if you don't, right? So it's like it just allows me to be better faith if I actually know what you actually believe.
Oh, okay. I disagree with that opinion, but I'll go ahead and give in and say I'm essentially non-denominational Christian.
Okay, that's fine.
If you could put it that way.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so now that I kind of have some background, go ahead and ask your questions.
Okay, to me, what has been the most compelling for me has really been the theological argument that I've noticed. That's really what I've noticed for myself, is just the excess of beauty. And I don't really think that it's, I mean, and beauty for no cause. Everywhere, I'm an artist, visual artist, and a musician, and just like to me, I just have a few questions. Like, don't some of doesn't the fine tuning, how finely tuned the universe, isn't that beautiful to you? I mean, and does that
No,
not
it's actually awful.
Why is that awful?
It would be so much nicer if all of the numbers were nice and like expected, but some of the numbers are like weirdly small and some of the numbers are like weirdly big. I think that's awful.
Wow. So all right, so do you not gain any joy from having, like me, I like solving problems. I like, and you are a physicist, don't you like solving problems? And doesn't it make
Yeah,
it
of
more
course I do.
interesting? Doesn't it make it more interesting if you have something that's complex to solve rather than something that lays in your lap? Or
Oh
maybe,
yeah,
maybe,
so
maybe
so I agree that, well, so it can be very satisfying to solve a hard problem, or to solve a hard problem. But what I'm saying is not that like, you know, that like it's just like really straightforward and easy. What I'm saying is that like the numbers that are required from like experiments are just like weirdly different than what one would expect them to be. And like the numbers they have to plug in to make the math work they're just like, some of them are really small and some of them are really big, and that's weird. And like it would be so much more elegant if like the numbers were all like, you know, if one of the numbers was like pi squared and another one of the numbers was like you know, e to the minus the golden ratio squared, just like things like that. Like it would be really nice if like the numbers worked out like really nicely, but they don't. They're just like random weird numbers, and that's awful.
I do have some training with mathematics, and I know a little bit of physics, not nearly on your level, but so I will regress to an argument maybe that can be more from my perspective, something that I may be able to provide you for an analogy.
Sure.
With music, you know, of course, it encompasses physics and mathematics to some degree, and actually to a larger degree the more you find out about it. And some things that I didn't realize at first about it were say like the harmonic series and
Hmm.
uh, 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 the beauty encompassed in that, like I didn't understand some things about it, but then when I found out, when even though it was complex and maybe at first it seemed maybe beyond my grasp at first, and then all of a sudden the knowing and the realization of seeing the macro of that system instead of just the micro gave me a really pleasing, awe-inspired, awe-inspiration, inspired feeling for the beauty of that and just its existence, and to me, it just the amount, the excess of beauty. Okay, I mean, you just have to. Okay, so maybe some of those numbers may be, uh, they may stress your bounds for what is enjoyable, but you don't see everywhere. I mean, everywhere I look, there's just a poetic beauty in everything. What about the Fibonacci sequence? That is not that's not beautiful to you, or just that occurs in nature and naturally.
It does occur naturally, and it makes pretty pleasing shape, or pretty pleasing ratios. But like the trouble is that we know why it occurs naturally, and it's because in some sense it's like the most irrational number. So like you'll see this in like leaf patterns, you'll see this in spiral and like nautilus shells because there is like some sort of optimization game happening on the biological level.
Okay, well, what about like say the cosmological constant and what the probability of that occurring in just I mean just by chance. I mean, because we have to agree, right, that either everything that we know has happened by chance, or there was a designer, right? That's pretty much binary, isn't it?
No. So I guess there's sort of four options, right? You could have a designer. You
Okay.
could have it could be where everything is. It could be that everything is by chance. It could be that there was no other way it could have been. Like it could have had to be this way for some reason. Or it could be that we are in a multiverse, and so all possible things are arising for all possible ways that the universe could have been realized, and we just happen to be in one where humans can exist.
But doesn't that seems like to me that if you factor in the most common denominators of those, that three of those are in the argument of chance, and the other one is for a creator.
Two of
It
them are
still seems kind of
explicitly
binary
not
to me.
chance based.
Binary to me.
Two of them are explicitly not chance based. If they're necessary, then it's not chance. They had to be this way. That's not chance. And on the other hand, if we're in a multiverse, well, then there's not chance because everything is realized, and so of course the one that's compatible with our life will be here.
Well, okay. What about what about the fact that, see, I don't know. To me, it just seems that, okay, just the excessive beauty. I mean, for not even, doesn't even need a reason to have to exist, or how do
Beauty
you
doesn't.
don't see beauty, you don't see beauty in the universe like that, or just the
Sure, I do.
systems, human systems.
There are things that are pleasing about the universe. There are also things that are very like disturbing about the universe, right? I think that that's just kind of like a natural extrapolation of like our innate aesthetic preferences, and those can be traced back like psychologically or evolutionarily rather.
Okay, well, evolutionarily, didn't weren't there some mathematicians that decided that maybe there was not enough time for evolution to have occurred on Earth in the way
I'm
that it
sure.
that,
I'm
that
sure.
it's
I think
supposed
I
to?
know which. I think I know who you're referring to. He's a Christian
No,
evolutionary,
no.
not guy. Well, so I'm not familiar with who you're talking about, but no, I don't think that anybody's made that evaluation.
Well, you know what they have. While we're talking, I'll try to look it up so I can actually refer to who I'm talking about. But
Okay.
I'll posit some other arguments for you.
Sure.
What about the fact that, let's see, where was I going with that? I was going that. Um, oh, what about, well, let's dive into that. I mean, uh, uh, the existence of evolution. Maybe don't you think that with random chance that there's enough time for evolution to have evolved the way that it did
Seems like it. Yeah.
over this amount of time?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
evolution isn't random. It's what you might call like a directed random phenomenon. namely that you have like random as your input, but then there's some sort of direction as your output, so you end up with some directed motion, if you will.
Okay, well, evolution of life is not random because life, implies a purpose. So
I don't know what you mean by the evolution of life
that
then.
implies evolution of life, meaning once life had arisen from the ether or whatever, then it all of a sudden had a purpose, and then from
I don't
that
think it had a
point,
purpose. I mean, actually, you could say it had a purpose.
well,
The purpose was just to survive, because if it didn't have that purpose, then it would have died.
well, of course, but purpose implies intelligence, even on that
No, it
basic
doesn't.
level.
I mean, like this, like, look, imagine that, like through supremely random chance, you have two different cells that evolve from otherwise unliving chemicals. One of the cells seeks to reproduce as much as it can, and the other cell just doesn't. Which one is more likely to survive and pass on its genes?
Yeah, so okay, I can see that argument.
So there's
What
there's
about
no intelligence behind that, right?
sure, okay, but what about? I mean, the number of systems that are present in biology, though, for them to have, I mean, some things they have to. I mean, some systems like DNA, for instance. I'm no biologist, so I can't explain to you exactly what is dependent on certain chemicals to be existent for it to even formulate. So which one? It's like the chicken came before the egg theory. I mean, how do you explain those kind of contradictions?
What's the contradiction?
Like that you need certain you need some existent proteins that are built by DNA before DNA to exist. I mean,
I don't think you do. I think you just, I mean, like nowadays, sure, but that's not necessarily the case for like, proto-living organisms.
Even if they are now, I mean, how do you explain symbiotic organisms where one life is dependent on the
That they
existence
didn't
of
used to be symbiotic.
how does it go to being that? I mean, where does that first? It's like the chicken before the egg theory. I mean,
Okay,
how
so
does
so
that?
this is like the kind of thing that's fairly easy to explain. So, for example, suppose that you have a flower, um, and that flower has a certain shape. It just has whatever shape it has, and it produces a nectar, and it has pollen in it, whatever flowers do. And then a bee comes along, and it turns out that that bee gets a lot of food from that flower. It eats a lot of the nectar, and then it carries the pollen, right? Um, sorry, let's say that let's actually change the scenario so it's a little bit easier to see what's happening. Imagine that the pollen that the flower carried was just not very sticky, right? So it kind of relied on the wind to distribute the pollen in the flowers. But then